right. Getting myself situated here, guys. A little early. Drinking some water. We'll do beer another time. It's a little late. I am expecting some panel members to be joining here shortly. We'll give those guys a few minutes. So, can you guys hear me okay? Just do an audio check, making sure everything is good. Garbled user, how you doing? All right, very cool. Okay, so just waiting for Ken and for James to jump on here. But I'll start off with the first question here. So let's see, what sort of surgery would be required to add an AVR to one that wasn't originally designed for it? Let's see here. Hold on, someone just Ken just hey, how you doing, Ken? I sent the invite to your emails there and also to the text. I don't know if you guys got that or not. If you didn't, let me know and I'll resend it. Garbled, I am not sure if that would even be possible. So to add an AVR to, say, a capacitor excited generator, yeah, I guess in theory, there's what's called a rotating rectifier assembly that's on the rotor. And that takes the place of the slip rings that normally the brush head assembly would go to. It would be, in theory, possible to remove that from the rotor and then replace it with the slip ring. But where would you find the parts? I'm not sure where you can find the parts there. Hang on, guys. I'm just going to send a quick email here. I'll just make sure it actually went through. I actually sent it over to... Give me 1 second, guys. We're going to get this all fixed here. I do work with a Mac, so I'm just trying to remember what the keyboard shortcuts are. All right, sent out an email. Perfect. Okay, back onto the main screen here. There you are. Okay, so we're going to get in. There's James.
How you doing, Gary?
Can't hear you.
Uh-oh.
We got, how you doing, Ken?
I was going to say, sure, the night the Rangers are playing the playoffs. Yeah, okay.
There it is. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. No, I have
Excellent.
I have my little sub mixer here that I just didn't push a button.
Perfect.
Guys, how you doing?
Good. How you all doing?
Good.
Haven't seen you in a while.
No, it's been a little busy. We have family coming up from Texas here in a couple weeks, on my side of the family, on my wife's side. So we're just getting ready for that, celebrating birthdays early while they're here, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's been a little crazy. I finished up a zero turn that had a ton of mice damage, and it was just very expensive.
The smell kills you, though. I can't stand
it. I can't stand it. They pissed in there. It was terrible. But $400 in parts later, and almost a little over that much for labor to basically rebuild the wiring harness because they ate through everything.
Yeah. Now, will the customer bitch about that price though? I mean,
I told them that's what it was going to cost them. It was like $380 in parts, and I said I'm charging you about $500, a little over $500 with tax, to do that. Because
what do you mark up parts though? You're like 20%, or
I usually do about 20%. I mean, this was someone I know, so I was just, for this particular job, I just passed the parts through. But with the labor, I'm not really going to be able to do much with But I mean, hey, I mean, it's a lot of time. I think I probably put in
Yeah.
about 4.5 hours worth of work to get that fixed. So
It's
Hey, question, Gary.
amazing the
Do
damage.
you email Bruce at all? Bruce Pender?
Bruce Pender, no.
You have his email? Bruce's email?
No, but I can send it to him.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I know he's always interested in talking with you too. So I'm wondering,
of course, yeah.
he's
I mean,
2 hours behind us. It might be a good time for him too. I
Yeah.
emailed him that you're going to be on, but I
Yeah.
didn't email him any link or anything.
do you want to? Yeah, if you want
I'll
to
forward the link to him. Yeah.
forward the link to him. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to have him on. More than happy. Yeah. So I started off with so Garbled User is on here, and he was starting the ask a couple questions here. And James, this was actually a very interesting one for that you might be interested in. And oh, you guys have a storm? Is that you guys? Is there a storm?
My dog was barking.
Ah, okay. Might as well be, right? Yeah, so he actually has a pretty good question here. How can you what would be required to put an AVR on a capacitor excited generator? I'm assuming one that didn't have one.
Well,
I was
yeah.
postulating that it's
I thought that's totally different electronics or something. Isn't
no,
it?
I mean it's if anything, the capacitor excited generator is more simple, right? It's all it is. It's the rotor, but instead of the slip rings, it's got what's called a rotating rectifier assembly. It's just a bridge rectifier. It's
You talking the diodes on the brushes or?
no, the diodes that are
On the rotor.
on the rotor itself.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's what they call a rotating.
Oh, those little wires that you say never break them.
Yeah, never break
Yeah.
them. It's
Or
it's
scratch
really,
them.
it's really impractical, Garbled. I mean, in theory, it could be done with some maybe 3D printing to make the slip rings and to find that assembly, but why bother? It's if anything, a capacitor excited generator in the portable realm, there's going to be some inherent drawbacks with capacitor excited as it is because of the waveform is going to be a lot dirtier unless you keep a constant resistive load on it. AVRs do recover voltage quicker. If it drops really quick for a big heavy surge like an air conditioning starting up, sure. But if it's properly sized, you should be fine. I mean, it's a novelty project. I'd love to see you guys do a video on that, but I don't think I would
Yeah.
tackle one myself.
Well, even brushed generators, like the ones that just use a regulator, you can buy AVRs that are kind of universal AVRs that you could
Yep.
retrofit it, but it's not really cost effective. I mean, maybe you could find a clone one, but I would say it'd be better just to go buy the generator that has what
Yeah.
you need already. Because people ask that all the time, like, can I put an electric start on? And it's like, well, you could, but by the time you buy all the parts, you might
Yep.
as well just sell your generator, buy one that has electric start on it.
Yeah. But Neuralnar. Yeah, I haven't his name is Brian. I haven't talked to him in years. So before I met you, James and Ken, so this gentleman, he's got a channel that he hasn't done a lot of you should definitely check it out. Another nerd just like me, right? He works on power inverters. I think he's an engineer by trade. And he would test all these power inverters, and from the cheapest of the cheap to some of the very expensive Samlex, and Samlex is made in Western Canada, and some of the best on the market. And it's just, he even built a huge battery bank that probably weighs, I don't know, a good 600 pounds worth of these big, huge computer batteries, and he powers his whole house on it. I thought it was, and he made himself his own generator with the gas engine, and I think he made I think it's like a 200 amp alternator, like a car alternator, and that's how he charges his battery bank. It was actually pretty impressive. But yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, so I definitely wanted anything about power inverter generators. I mean, that's really where I want to focus on tonight. And if you guys are interested in the tri-fuel conversion, dual fuel conversion, some of the issues that may go on with those machines, I know that I fielded a lot of questions about that. And I don't think there's a lot of, I mean, they're available from Champion, right? Champion has a lot of the dual fuel generators out there now, but when it comes to repairing them, if it may run on gasoline or it may run on it may not on propane or vice versa. There's a couple that are actually some decent models, but I haven't really come across too many in the shop yet that have had problems because they're still pretty new to the market.
They are. Someone was just asking me about one that it's a 15,000 watt. I think it's Duramax potentially.
Yep.
Fuel injected,
Wow.
tri-fuel. I mean, beautiful machine. It's $3,000. I mean, it's quite expensive, but he was asking some questions about how to hook it up to his house. And, my concern is with stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
I prefer the gasoline ones only because for $20, you can go get another carb.
Yeah.
When the propane system fails, you may not be able to find parts, or if you do, it's $200.
Yeah.
And it's specialized, and it's just
Yeah.
harder to get. So there's pros or cons.
Mhm.
For sure, they run cleaner. At least you have options if there's a fuel shortage. But
Sure.
repairing them scares me a little bit.
That
Yeah.
wasn't an inverter, right? That was just regular.
Normally they are. I mean, Champion actually has. I mean, they have dual fuel, so it runs on either propane or gasoline. But they do have some of them that I don't think they actually come. I haven't really looked at their lineup recently. Not that they couldn't be converted to propane. Some of their inverter models, sure. I don't think they come like that with the dual fuel inverter. Maybe they do. I'm not sure. I haven't looked, but it would be cool.
I just converted my first one.
How did it go?
Pretty good. I'm down on power, but I think that's to be expected, like horsepower.
Yeah. And that's usually an it depends answer. So
Yeah.
propane has less BTUs than gasoline, but and then natural gas has less BTUs than propane. So
Right.
that's really kind of like the way it goes. But depending on how much horsepower you originally had on gasoline to the amount of watts that it's rated at, if you have a little bit less horsepower, you may not actually see a power loss if the engine or the prime mover was overbuilt for the given wattage that it was rated at. And that's, a lot of other things, vaporization of the gasoline and complete combustion, all that other stuff that comes into play. But like in my experience, like my Yamaha EF2000 IS, I converted that to propane, could run it on natural gas. I did a video a couple years ago, and it ran its full 1600 watts of power and no problem. And I haven't run gasoline since I had first gotten it. You have to run gasoline on it for the first few hours to break in the engine.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't do that. You run it on gasoline for the first few hours just so that it can get the wear patterns inside the cylinder.
Yeah.
And then you change out the oil, and then you can run it on propane to your heart's content. But no problems getting the full 1600 watts of running watts.
And what about the spark plug? Did you have to change the gap? Because I've heard that you do.
Steve, Steve, I talked to Steve about this the other day. So it's so no, I actually didn't have to do that. Normally, it is recommended though. So it comes down to the auto ignition temperature. So the auto ignition of temperature of gasoline is very low. I think it's like 500 or 530 degrees Fahrenheit. It's fairly low. You look at propane. Propane has more around 1140 degrees Fahrenheit, so much hotter.
Okay.
And in order to compensate for the hotter auto ignition, you close the gap of the spark plug so you get a hotter spark. And instead of say 30,000s, you may want to do 15,000s, for example.
Yeah.
That's what you at US Carburation has recommended in the past. But
interesting. I just used the US Carburation conversion kit. They did recommend 20.
20. Yep.
I didn't adjust it, but I wasn't sure if it was due to just prolonging the life of the spark plug versus actually adding power back that's missing.
Auto ignition. Yep. I try it. It may just help. I would recommend trying it. Try 20,000s and see if it makes a difference. Because the wider the spark, the lower the temperature. And if you have fresh gasoline, as long as it's fresh and not aged out where it looks like morning piss, it should ignite fairly easily on an 8-to-1 compression ratio, which is pretty standard on most of the small engines. Ideally for propane, you would want like 10-to-1. 12-to-1 is really preferred if you want to get the power out of it, but you have a smaller gap that'll make it it should start up just fine. I haven't had an issue with it on my Yamaha.
What's that booster pump? What's he talking about?
Natural gas booster pump. Well, on natural gas, I am not sure actually.
Something to help it start, maybe.
Not sure.
Not sure. Pressure is always an issue. Yeah, but usually you just have to oversize the lines to get.
It's about volume. So natural gas
Right.
and even propane, it's about volume. So it's like every foot you lose a certain amount of cubic. They go by cubic foot of natural gas, but I think it's another definition for propane. Um, but you need to oversize the line. It has to be at 11 inches of water com, which is usually coming in through your meter at your house. But yeah, the it's going to burn more. Basically, propane and natural gas, you're going to burn more of it to equal the same amount of
Yeah.
wattage output, and that's why it's important. You don't want to put a half-inch line where you need a 3/4 line or a 1-inch line, and you'll definitely see the difference because you may get it to start and run. As soon as you put a load on it, the engine stumbles, leans out, and dies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure what a booster pump would be. I would think that some sort of buffer pump, it boosts the pressure or something. I'm not sure. Yeah, he's saying okay. So so residential lines have a lower flow rate. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yep. More calories in propane than natural gas. Yeah, yep, that is right. Yeah, so more BTUs he's referring to. More BTUs.
Yeah, it says they increase the street level pressure.
Yep. Oh, okay. Here we go.
Oh, it's just an intensifier, a large over small diameter. That's all.
Oh, okay.
It's just a large over small piston intensifier. That's it.
Interesting.
We use that at work now when we want to intensify air pressure.
Yeah.
Air over oil pumps, that kind of stuff.
3,200 watts and 36
engine.
No. Any inductive motor, like an air conditioning electric motor, is going to take anywhere from 2 to 3 times or even more in some cases if it doesn't have a good capacitor. You need that. It's going to need to surge for at least half a second to get past the locked rotor amperage draw there. So no, it would not. And if it could, it would probably trip the breaker on the generator there. Unfortunately, inverters are not known for their surge capacity, and by design, they're just not designed for that. They can put consistent, very clean power, but the way that they're designed and the way that the architecture of an inverter actually works, they can't surge for that long unless they're extremely overbuilt where the cost just doesn't make sense. So
I guess
that brings up
Orly was asking about the spark plug gap with time. Coil gap affects timing, not
coil gap. Yeah.
Did you see the guy on Steve's video who's challenging me and yelling and screaming about it?
No, I didn't. I think
gaps affect nothing, and I'm like, okay.
I guess there's a lot of passionate people when it comes.
He says, I've tried all kinds of coil gaps that never once affected the timing. I'm like, how are you checking it? I've had them where the coil gap was so small, almost like non-existent, and it ripped your hand out because it was so far,
Oh man,
interesting.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Not on all engines, but on certain ones I've had it where it's done that.
Yeah. Cubic feet per hour. That's the metric I was looking for. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Yeah,
I was looking up. I was going back to like my days as an ME where with kilogram meters.
Hey, Bruce.
And all that stuff.
Hey, Bruce.
Hey,
there he is.
How you doing, Bruce?
Good. Just getting set up here.
It's all good.
Comments on the right.
Thinking about you, Bruce. I'm watching hockey, so.
You're watching Bruce's video.
Hockey's over for me since the Calgary Flames lost to Edmonton.
He lost to Edmonton.
Yeah, but Edmonton's playing, I think, Colorado tomorrow.
The Oilers, yeah.
Yeah, they're doing their thing, taking turns.
We're doing a hockey themed birthday for when my family comes up from Texas in a couple weeks. So he's doing youth hockey. I think he's gonna be 9. No, he's gonna be 8 this year.
Oh yeah.
My son's in an adult league.
Nice.
But he's got to drive from Trumbull here to Northford to go play, which is literally almost an hour.
Wow.
But it's all adults in the New Haven County thing. But he's playing, so
that's awesome. Yeah, I did t-ball when I was a kid. I didn't like it. I just wasn't my thing.
Well, my kid learned how to skate and joined the hockey the hockey team. Yeah.
Wow.
So
impressive.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Every
Although-
kid when I was a kid played hockey, but we were from the Canadian prairies, right?
Grow a beard and play
Lanny
hockey.
McDonald and all the same age group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it, and he really enjoys it. He plays that, and he plays lacrosse. So, how you doing, Henry?
Henry,
Hey, Henry.
I've had a rough week, boys.
What happened?
Oh, well, I have this the guy who did my front yard on the landscaping. It was a
Yep.
big
Mr.
job. Like,
Muscles?
no, he was a worker. So anyway, he dropped off 2 of those plate compactors.
Ooh,
You know that?
Yeah.
Whackers? What
Yeah.
brand?
So they're 180. Oh, they're 100. These ones were 150 pounds, but they can, if they're 7-horse, they can go up to a 200 pounds.
200 pounds. I've
You're talking
And I'm in the
Jumping
garage
jacks
and I
or
can't
plate
put them on
compactors?
my lift, and I'm on my hands and knees, and I'm 65 years old, and
Plate
I'm whining.
compactors, Bruce, or jumping jacks?
Pardon me?
Plate compactors or jumping
Plate.
jacks?
Yeah, they're plates.
plate. I've worked on a 7-horse before. That thing, that's no joke. That thing is just dead weight.
It's just nasty.
Nasty.
These ones were 160s, so they were
okay.
5.5 horse.
That's still,
Oh
I'm 37. I don't like lifting that kind of stuff.
no, and so I neither one of them. I took the rewinds off. I couldn't get them to pull with the rewind. Am I interrupting anything, by the way?
No, fine.
Okay.
No.
So anyway,
Talking about engines.
I couldn't get either one to turn with the rewind. So I checked the oil on both. They were both overfilled with oil.
Yep.
Because they're really hard to fill because you can't get to the spout. So they probably tilted them up on a piece of wood and filled them and then lowered them back down. So then I'm wondering if they're hydrolocked on oil.
Yep.
Well, no, I drained off, half a liter of oil, and then so I couldn't get them to turn with the rewind. So I got my big 18-inch. I said to hell with this. These things are wrecked anyway, and I got my
Well, bring 'em on.
18-inch ratchet,
Mhm.
and I took the rewind off, put it right on the bolt, and I got a quarter of a turn, and then a little more, and a little more, and a little more. I said, oh, okay. So squirted some juice down the carburetor. I'm not fooling around here. If these things don't work, this guy's a contractor. He's got the money to get them.
He's got the money.
You know what I mean? This isn't my neighbor's compactor. So
Yeah.
anyway, boom! It fires up. Big fire out of the exhaust. Must have been some gas accumulation. So I got the one fixed, and the other one. And with the first one, I had to take a punch and tamp the cylinder down to get it to move a quarter of an inch. Like it was Farmer Mean. It wasn't Bruce, the small engine guy. It was Farmer Mean. So I took some pins and I got the piston to move down a quarter of an inch and got things rotating, and I fixed it. But the other one was done, and I didn't even investigate it to see if it was the outside clutch that was seizing it or if the engine was seized. I was done.
Done. Yeah.
And then we have all this gardening going on right now because you guys know our spring lasts 2 weeks. Not like you got to, the frost is out of the ground, the warm weather hits, you got to get your seeds in the first
Sure.
two. Everything happens, because you're harvesting in September.
Right.
So it's like, boom, I'm having this.
I want to see your potatoes again, Bruce.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
your potatoes from last year.
Are you
They're great, eh?
Are you
You know?
Eastern Canada? You're Eastern Canada.
Western, no, right on the eastern slopes of the Rockies. So
Okay. Yep.
be like Denver, but further west and north.
Okay. So
Quick question: did you guys answer Randy's question from earlier about using a room air conditioner?
yeah.
Oh,
So
Okay.
we had,
Oh,
we had said that he was trying to run a 5,000 BTU window air conditioner, and I would even amend my answer to say it depends, just because some of the air conditioners have a soft start capability where it doesn't take all that power instantaneously. It'll
Right.
gradually ramp up the power to the compressor.
Oh yeah.
You could try it. I know that a lot of guys like that have like the fifth wheels with the 13,000 or 12,000 BTU roof air conditioning, trying to get a 3,000 watt inverter to start it up. No, not unless you have a soft start capacitor,
Right.
or a soft start kit in there. You can
Or
use
some
it.
sort of a
You can parallel.
even old style relay addition.
Well, they
not
sell
instantaneous pull. Yeah.
They do sell them.
very efficient air conditioners. If that's something you want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one that'll run on like 300 watts on low. It's amazing.
But you got to get it to that.
Yeah, you got to get it to that, and it uses a
Yeah.
different type of compressor. It doesn't use a reciprocating piston compressor. It uses the it uses a different type of compressor where it's tall and thin. I forget what they call
This
it.
is RV, Jim?
Yeah.
No, this is for like a window air conditioner.
Really?
You can
Oh.
get
Yeah,
we're not-
you can. They've got-
very efficient ones
Yep.
that will soft start and run substantially less wattage than
Yeah.
what you would normally have.
I'm going air conditioner.
Yeah.
Well, because a lot of
For that one day a year, Bruce, right?
Well, my
Wow.
neighbor's got an air conditioner in his house, but we've got a nice tall attic, and the air
Right, heat
is
pump.
removed, and we don't have any issue.
yeah,
Hmm.
it's good, and I think that there's been a huge push on it because a lot of the older homes that don't have central air, or a lot of people don't want to do that. They only have 15 amp circuits, and those 15 amp circuits in your house are usually powering an entire room or a bunch of
Yeah.
bedrooms, and you
Yep.
can't run more than one air
Yep.
conditioner on there without
right.
tripping the breaker. So if
Yep.
they're becoming more efficient that way, I mean that's pretty impressive at a 5,500 BTU. At my in-laws, they have an 8,000 for their living room, and they have a little 5,500 watt for the bedroom. But I remember I had a 10,000 air conditioner when I had my apartment, and I needed a dedicated 20 amp breaker for that.
Yeah,
There's just no other way it was going to start with something else on it.
exactly. I have a well and a well pump.
Yep.
And it was over 20 years old, and it was breaking down basically several times a year. So we finally put a new one in, but we got it purposely with the soft start feature.
Yep.
And it can come on gradually and ramp up as needed. So I
That's
haven't
good.
actually tried it yet on the generator, but the old pump, if I wanted to use it, I literally have to shut everything off in the house,
Oh,
turn
Yeah.
eco switch off, cross my fingers, and
Yep.
flip the switch.
Mm-hmm.
And
Your
it's
7,000
a
watt, right?
struggle.
Your 7,000 watt.
It was the EU 6500.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
there you
one
go, right,
could
that's right.
barely do
Very
it. That
capable,
surge.
but
Yeah.
even that has its limitations. No, that's actually really cool. Actually, I don't know. When my wife and I got our house here, we said no HOA, no septic,
Yeah.
and damn no well.
Well, I got two of those.
Too much work.
well, wait till we all have 2 or 3 electric vehicles plugged in outside at Christmas time. There's a
Nice.
turkey in the oven, and the kids show up, and the kids pooped his pants, and you got stuff in the dryer. You got
Yeah.
3 or 4 cars plugged in.
Oh God.
It's not going to happen.
Those
Not looking forward to
those
soft
can
start,
serve
no
as
start.
generators, by the way.
They
Some
can.
of them.
and they
Yeah.
don't run on the standard auto if they're hybrids anyway. Well,
Right.
some of the hybrids, like you've seen the videos on YouTube where a guy basically runs his house on a Prius. He hooks up an inverter to the big
Nope.
battery bank,
Gotta love that.
and
eh?
the Prius is designed to where the gas engine charges up the battery bank
True.
inside.
Yeah.
And they have different types of hybrids. So one where
They
the
invert
electric,
they invert the juice out of the Prius back to AC for the house.
pretty much, and it was actually pretty impressive. It worked, and a lot of people were saying because it's not the type of engine, it's not your typical push rod valve type of engine where it relies on splash lubrication for the top of the pistons. I'm sorry, the top of the cylinder head, where the rocker arms and the valve train is. Because if you're running at idle all the time, it's not splashing the oil up there. Well, that particular engine doesn't have to worry about that because it's got auto oilers from the pump that's squirting oil up on top there, so it can happily run at idle and charge the batteries and not have a problem. But I thought that was pretty impressive. So
They had that commercial with the
That's
new
totally
Ford pickup.
backwards, right? That's
Mhm.
that's not where your head
my
should
guitar
be
player
with
has that
electric
Ford.
cars.
He has that Ford pickup.
Well, they show the one powering the house, and I'm
House.
like,
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait,
I don't know what the
What was
output
powering a
is.
house?
It's a
a
Ford.
Ford pickup inverter generator.
Yep.
It was
A
something
Ford
like
pickup.
13 or 14,000 watts. They said.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
There's
that you can
1,000
do.
watts isn't very much.
Yeah.
No.
No,
I
14.
mean, most car alternators are what? About 1,400 watts?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you'd be
90
better
amps
off just
usually.
hooking up a 12-volt inverter and running a cord into the fridge.
It's possible. I mean, so at 12 volts to 120 volts, you're going to get like 4 times the current, that it normally would because you're stepping it up, 4 times.
Yeah, they showed it powering McMansion. I'm like, how the hell is it?
Yeah, well, that's all smoke and mirrors, man.
I don't know.
Literally.
Well, for $100,000 pickup,
Yeah.
So you had Garbled here has he's saying, hey, we'd love the chance to patch that latest stator with the burn spot. I saw your video yesterday morning, and Yeah, it's too bad that the stator was burned off, but you had a spare one lying around.
Well, yeah, and that's why I bought the generator, because I had 2 spare ones laying around, and that thing looked brand new. I mean, it just needed. Worst case, you throw one of the other power heads on, but
Yep.
repairing a power head
No.
that is melted down, you need to rewind it,
Yeah.
and that is something I don't have time or the skill or the patience. Believe it or not, I'm not going to do it. Maybe when I retire, maybe.
You know,
But
back in
it's-
the 40s, my
I won't
dad
be able
would
to see by
wind
then.
little generators with the insulated copper.
Really,
It is
it's a
possible.
great skill to have.
He would do it
I
on a
wish I could
drill,
do
and
it.
he would do it, but it
kind
was
of a
all
lost
homemade stuff
trade.
that he probably got from Popular Mechanics in 1945.
Ah,
Right, stuff like that, right? Yeah. So he was
Yeah.
a good influence on me.
It's one of those lost trades. I mean, every time I see
Yeah.
a video of them actually, this machine will wrap the wires in like 10 seconds, and then the machine will push the wires into the various laminations, and then it's pretty much put together. But where you could tell the difference between a cheap power head and a good power head is
Yeah.
how they actually take the laminations and the windings, and they bake them in the varnish, and then it will cure at a very high temperature so that it's got a high insulation class, so that it doesn't
And
yeah,
so movement won't wear
Most-
things out either.
it's
most
more for vibration
stators-
than anything, but
Yeah, most stators and rotors are not. They're just wound and
They're just wound,
thrown
exactly.
out. And those machines you're talking about, I mean, they kind of, they. It's amazing that they work at all, because the wires are just getting pushed in there,
Mhm.
kind of haphazardly with
Yep.
force.
And how thick
And-
is the insulation's so thin you can see the copper.
Yeah,
Exactly. And
Yeah,
that's
that's the problem. And it's amazing that
Chinesium.
it's just
No,
get them out the
before
door
that,
as fast as possible. If they actually
we're talking Tesla here.
Yeah, if they actually
yeah,
baked them and did them properly, they'd last forever. That's why the older generators,
hmm You know,
work
I don't
great.
want to sound like my father and his dad. And I sold a lawnmower today that was made in 1992, 1992, an old
Yeah.
flathead classic. And he was like, "Oh, this is exactly what I need. Something that I can start. I only paid $40 for it. Thank you." He was like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." And he took his old lawnmower, and I know that thing is
Yeah.
going to be running in 10 years.
probably.
Isn't that sad?
I
That's
just
how things are built
worked
to last.
on a Sears and Roebuck generator,
Yeah.
500
yeah.
watts, 2-stroke, 40 years old. Fired right up.
Road King does a lot of
It
that.
works
You guys
fine.
watch
The
Road, you guys
capacitor's
watch
good.
Road King? Do you guys watch
Yeah,
Road King?
what is the pickup on now? Episode 4032?
So,
Yeah, him and Small Engine Mike.
Split systems with an inverter drive will work.
Split systems.
I'm old
Like
school.
mini splits.
Yeah.
You can put two together. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah,
Well,
he's
you
saying
can.
he's saying that he has a Camry hybrid. So he wants
Oh.
to do the same thing what I was talking about with that Prius. So an inverter drive. So basically the electric motor drives the wheels, and then or the gas engine can drive the wheels. It's split between the gas engine and the inverter is what he's referring to, I think. Interestingly enough, I mean, there's more than one type of variant of hybrid out there. I figured that the hybrids were going to, be here to stay, because are you really going to be able to get rid of the gasoline engine? You'll probably make it as more efficient, sure. I mean, but all electric, I don't get it. I'm to me,
You know,
I think it's a crock
my
of
neighborhood's going
crap.
to be my neighborhood's going to be glowing red hot, and
Yeah,
because everybody's going to be pushing
Every
their 100
electric-
amp service
yeah.
to the max, and then the
Yeah.
cost of electricity is going to be more than what we're paying for fuel.
Yeah.
Well, you need a generator when the grid collapses, because everyone's charging their cars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. Here you go. You got yourself your little EV,
But just go down to
you got
basics.
your
How
Leaf
do they make electricity?
Nissan Leaf EV car, and you got a 5,000 watt generator in the back.
Mm.
Well, you saw it was a Cadillac. They offer that trailer now with the generator. Yeah, it looks like a regular
Plug her
Cadillac
in,
with a trailer.
Go down the road. You're
Car.
saving. I'm not against it. I'm just against
Oh,
Lack of common sense is what I'm.
I go back to the very beginning. How are you making electricity? They're still using
Right.
fossil
If you're
fuels.
exactly, exactly
Where's
my
the
point.
saving?
They're all
I mean, right now
fossil
we
fuel
might be
powered.
using fairly clean fuels versus
Unless
coal
unless they can
generated electricity, and your opinion on nuclear generated electricity. Lots of
Mm.
opinions there, right? Lots of opinions.
I think
Good,
it's
good,
the
bad, right, wrong.
technology is there. I mean, for
That
nuclear, but it also has an environmental impact. Unless they
Well,
can figure out a way to
the environmental impact is
unless,
100 years down the road, though.
unless they can figure out a
oh
way to
god.
recreate Iron Man's arc reactor, where you get all kinds of crazy amounts of power out of palladium.
Yeah, I think it's
There's the
stupid.
nerd.
I think of crazy stuff like, do you think we got good enough jettison? This is my own mind. I'm not going crazy, right? Maybe I am. But what about jettisoning this crap that we're generating in these nuclear plants with a huge, just like they threw the fireballs into the castles? And can we jettison this shit into the sun?
It would it would expel so much more energy.
Yeah, I know.
You think things would get hot?
It's a thought, though.
Things-
I don't know. The sun's pretty big. I don't know if we'd notice.
I think it would take it.
I don't know. I think it would. I don't know. It's
That's
conversation.
what my mind does when
Conversation
I'm
for
out
smart
there.
people.
If you guys
doing
ever
a
want to
valve
look at
job.
something, you talk about more energy out than you put in, which technically
Free energy.
defies laws of physics. We when I was at Mortool, we worked on some machinery to cut KDP crystal, which is artificial grown crystals, for the largest laser in the world, which technically, if it works, will take a gallon of seawater and convert it into enough electricity to power San Francisco Bay for a year. Okay. By bombarding it. Now, look this up if you get a chance. NIF, National Ignition Facility. That was the name of the project. Billions and billions of dollars. Take a look when you get a chance. It's the world's largest laser that was supposed to do all this. It never really did, but it's used for research now. But look it up. NIF, National
We learned a
Ignition
lot.
Facility in Lawrence Livermore Laboratory in California.
Well, my dad just passed away last June, and he was a huge advocate of fission, not fusion. Which one's the one? Okay, we've been doing nuclear
Fusion is
fission. He was
Yeah,
an
one
advocate of
boom
fusion.
versus bang.
Right.
boom. Yep.
Making it, not tearing it apart.
Yep.
And here he was, 88 years old, talking about the advocates of doing something like that. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, remember, was it Mr. Fusion, right? The DeLorean?
The DeLorean.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mr. Fusion. Yep. Powers the time circuits and the flux capacitor.
The flux capacitor.
Christopher Lloyd, he's a local Connecticut guy, right? I think he was in Stanford, but he's still kicking too.
Yep.
You got yourself Johnny here. He's got you got yourself a fan there, James.
Thank you, Johnny.
So I kind of embarrassed myself this morning. I had my video out for my usual Friday morning video, and I called it a Tecumseh. And I had two videos I was editing at the same time, and the second one was a
Tecumseh, what's
Tecumseh.
the difference, right?
Yeah, it's a power more.
Looked like
I just took the word Tecumseh out of the title.
Yeah.
But you know what? Your subs are good enough to pick all that stuff up and let you know, that's not a Tecumseh.
Yeah, they're very observant.
And then
Who
one
was
guy,
the one guy, Brucey, that was saying, "Oh, it's staged. It's all an act."
one guy came
Yeah,
on.
who is
Okay,
that guy?
one guy came on, and I pinned it. I pinned the comment because I thought, as if I'm the guy that's going to, if I have the time and the ability to stage something. I mean, my God, I can barely get the computer off my back and onto the subject, let alone staging something.
I think he was saying you're very good at some of the one-liners, especially.
Oh, I hope so.
The vice
Yeah,
jokes.
be on the stage.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. He was not staged. No, it's not.
Anyway,
I called it Bruce Juice.
He never made. I check every one of those, and I bet 99% of them have never made a video. Those rude comments.
Oh yeah, you look them up. They've been online for
You go in there line. Oh no, no videos.
That's what I always do when I get a really bad comment. I look at their profile and I'm like, "There's nothing.
There's nothing." Yeah. I had Elon Musk.
This video has no content, or this channel has no content.
Yeah, I had some guy. He was posing as Elon Musk, like, "Hey, you're an engineer. We're looking for very ambitious engineers. Give me a holler." I'm like, just delete. You try to delete those comments.
I don't delete comments unless it's like porn or just scam. But I have one guy. He watches every one of my videos, and he is my biggest critic.
Is
And
that right?
yeah, I almost wait for the
Usually you have
comment
one
because
too. Maybe
Does
more.
he have any logical arguments, Jim, or
You
not?
know what? I have a.
basically it's all fake. It's all a
Oh
set,
yeah.
it's
Well, I
all
have
YouTube. It's
I have
not
a cut and
real.
paste that I take from a Word document and I stick it in there and I said, "You're not watching a Steven Spielberg production. You were watching a guy all by himself in a
Yes.
garage, 65
Yeah.
years old, managing a channel of
Yeah.
44,000 subscribers, trying to get through life.
Right.
This
Exactly.
is
I'll fire the production manager and the
exactly.
the staff. I mean,
Get 'em
Only
leave
when
'em
I get
alone.
Would
really
you like the
pissed off.
moon landing of
Yeah.
generator videos? There you
I
go.
only do that when I get when I'm cranky on a Thursday night and I'm tired. I zap that in on them.
Let's see here. Yeah, power storage, big problem considering making
Yeah.
large nickel
is.
iron batteries. Okay, yeah, that's
The problem, yeah. So who was right, Edison or
It's the
Tesla?
discharge.
Who was right?
AC versus
DC's kind of
What,
coming
AC
back.
versus DC? Well,
Well,
almost
the
everything in your
distance,
house
right?
runs
Wasn't
on
all about
DC.
distance?
Yeah, well, I mean, DC motors are becoming more popular. I mean, look at I mean, your blender, for example.
Oh
I
no,
mean,
my furnace is a DC motor,
everything,
and it
and
draws
that's
no current at all.
and even more so because it's rectifying that AC into DC, but you
Right.
also need very clean power. And this is where, and James and I, we've talked about this quite a bit. Dirty power, the waveform being, having a lot of harmonic distortion.
Yes.
Most of these furnace controllers, for example, are extremely sensitive to that. So it's what is called active power factor correction. There's circuitry inside that's designed to only use so much power coming in from your AC line to power a DC load. It's a switch mode power supply, basically.
Right.
But the problem becomes that if that waveform is dirty, that circuitry can't sense, where it needs to adjust, and then it'll either run too hot or it'll not run at all or fail. And I've read plenty on the smokestack forums and the Gentech forums where their furnaces have burnt up because they were using a generator that had very dirty power. And you don't hear that with inverter generators because they're supposed to be very clean.
I don't know, but I've seen some oscilloscopes on inverter generators that look just as nasty as the stuff that's coming off the old stuff.
Right, in the AM frequency band, because they usually will cut in the production cost the filtering components at the output. And you'll see, so it's basically pulse width modulation that's making the AC waveform.
Right.
But the frequency at which those MOSFETs are firing at are in the AM frequency band, like 50K or and above.
Yeah.
When you have to use a combination of capacitors and ferrite chokes to basically remove that from the output. But that also can cause problems with controllers. You will really hear it in an audio application, for example. Like I just bought a cheap inverter, off of Amazon for like $32, and it's a pure sine wave, and it says it's rated up to 300 watts, but it's only exactly. So it's a step square wave or a square wave.
Anybody who's done any reading knows that those little guys right down there and over there are third frequency harmonics over thereof that cause that square wave. And that's what bothers me about the square wave harmonic generators. They talk about them like they're gold.
They're not.
The new generators are generating that square wave, where the old ones are trying to generate the sine wave on the bottom.
Well, see,
I don't know what is right. I honestly don't know what is best. I need an oscilloscope. And most oscilloscopes run at 60 hertz, and that's what you're trying to detect, and it's really hard to sync.
Right. Well, back then,
oops, did I just go off the deep end there, or am I okay?
No. So they're obsolete. It's the evolution of technology. So back when the square wave inverters came out, most of the power supplies, even if they were switch mode, they had what is called passive power factor correction, aka a capacitor.
Yeah, filter.
The filter. That's all they care about. They're just filtering that AC just so that it's going to rectify it anyway. It doesn't matter. So that's why those inverters did really well in the market when they were out. But as newer technology came out, you're having your smartphones that are able to do 25 watts of charging capability, for example. You can't do that with just a simple capacitor as a filter. You need a lot more circuitry to make that happen. And that's where the square wave inverters, the step square waves or the modified sine wave inverters, you'll wind up burning them up. And now the pure sine wave inverters, again, with that filtering component not in the cheaper inverters, you tend to have those problems where, you know, it doesn't charge, or they run hot, or you get a lot of noise, or you get that interference. Like if you're trying to, you know, touch your phone and it's the capacitive finger touch doesn't work. You know, you have to unplug it 1st. You've had those kinds of issues. That's because of the inverters not properly filtered. And I did a video on it where it's $110 frequency converter filter, and you usually see them in like pinball machines and whatnot in a smaller form factor, but this was designed specifically for inverters in mind, and it gets rid of all that AM frequency hash. But you know, who's going to
Just so you know, guys,
They must reduce the efficiency then too, because you're taking off all of that extra stuff that could be, you know,
you're converting it to heat. It's actually it's less efficient.
exactly.
You're converting it to heat.
You're taking these guys off and you're dumping it.
Dumping it.
That's usable. That's usable energy there,
right?
Versus
And that second, third, and even the fourth harmonic
it's like a face.
It's unusable power. So what are you going to do with it? You don't want it in your signal.
You put it into an aluminum heatsink.
Exactly, and that's just how it goes. Sorry, Ken.
No, that's all right. I mean,
no, he's a smart guy.
I've studied.
Guy builds helicopters, man.
I'm more mechanical than electrical, but I enjoy listening to it. But half of it is just.
And you know what? Really, I'm out of touch. Like I've been retired for 13 years, right? and even the type of rectification they're using now for our big battery strings at the phone company are totally different than when I left when I worked there 13 years ago, because the cost came down so far that they can afford to. Like all that stuff's been changed out. I bet you they haven't removed the old stuff because it weighed 12 tons. But the new one right above it, you know, that you could hold up and somebody, okay, can you screw that into the bay? You know, like where the old one we had to get a jack and okay, that hole's lined up, and you know, yeah, that's what I did.
My buddy ran the battery room at it used to be the old Southern Connecticut
interesting?
Telephone, but he ran the battery floor in New Haven that took care of all the toll lines. Okay, he'd have to check the fluid every day.
Oh yes, and then once a month you
walk in there. It looked like a mad scientist bubbling. The bus bars were humming, and you know, the relays.
Once a month you turn off all the rectifiers to see if the batteries will take the load, and then you measure the voltage drop from the battery strap to the post. And you wouldn't believe it, but it's 25 thousandths of a volt between the strap. You would think it would be zero, but there's your battery strap, and there's your post, and at 2,000 amps, there's going to be a 25 millivolt drop there on every post. You're talking 60 posts, right? So it's substantial. And then now with the new technology, they take a little gun and they take a temperature reading of each post. And if one's a little high, they take it, strap it across and clean it.
It's funny what Garbold was saying. My next door neighbor for years worked for Philips Medical, selling CAT scanners and portable. And my other friend worked for GE Medical, doing portable CAT scan. And they were in competition with each other. They knew each other. But for portable, like CAT scanners and stuff for like the Army, things like that. Interesting stuff.
Must be, it's very interesting stuff. Sounds, I'm sure you make a good living doing that kind of stuff. That's awesome.
Definitely.
I never made very good money, but it was a big umbrella job, you know, where your kids can get their teeth fixed and you get a pension.
Good benefits,
So, you know, I never made $30 an hour, but the benefits were worth another 25%.
Yeah, well, that's important, especially.
And that's big, right? You know, when you're raising a family, that's big.
You need it. Sometimes it's even more important than the actual salary. Sometimes
that's right.
Here in the States, Bruce,
pizza unpaid, but your kids got medical.
The first thing they ask in the States when you have people interviewing, the first thing they want to know is what's your insurance like. They don't care about the salary.
Well, you know, I went down to Phoenix once and I got a sinus infection, and it went into the emergency. It wasn't a big deal, but you're uncomfortable, right? And I went into the emergency ward and I was like, yeah. And I brought up my Blue Cross card. Mr. Pender, come with us. 9 X-rays of my
Bruce,
sinus.
you know, was that an additional insurance you had to take out?
That's just wrong, man. People shouldn't profit from somebody else's illness.
Bruce, though, isn't Canada? I'm not trying to be snotty, but isn't Canada the free insurance where the country provides you with insurance, or how's that work?
Yes,
like England or something. You know,
it all comes out of their tax.
The way our system is designed and funded, if it's serious, you're in. Okay, like you know, you're having the big one.
Yeah.
or your leg's been
But you
popped
said
out
Blue
and your
Cross. Did
femur's
you have
sticking outside of your
supplemental?
leg.
That's why you had it.
What's that? Go ahead. Sorry.
Nope.
You
I
missing
was
me? Hello?
losing it. Did you have supplemental insurance? That's why you had Blue Cross, or was that what?
Right. Well, we have supplemental for like we don't have free dental.
Oh, okay.
We don't have free drugs. But if you have a heart attack or you need something big, you get it.
Mm-hmm.
So your dental is extra.
Vision.
Yes, vision's extra.
Yep.
You know, that type of thing. Eh?
Yeah,
Now, I had a
good friend of mine,
cataract. Now that was labeled mental or mental.
cataract.
Medical. So I got, maybe it was. So I got a cataract done under the system.
Yep.
And they have some clinics that do nothing but cataracts. So they're a private clinic funded by the public system, so that there's no big huge lineup at the
Mhm.
operating room for cataracts. But it's a privately funded, publicly funded thing.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I had a friend of mine. Him and his sister. They were both engineers in St. Petersburg, Russia.
Oh yeah.
And one decided, I'm going to USA, and the other, she said, no, I'm going to Canada for the healthcare and the schooling. And it's ironic how they're both very successful. He's absolutely very successful here, machine designer, but she didn't want to have to worry about college for the kids and things like that because education, I guess, is provided, Bruce.
No, Ed, no. As soon as you get out of grade 12, it's mom and dad pay.
Oh, has it always been that way?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was free college.
It's not the land of utopia, but
yeah.
For an average schmo that is in his backyard and he has a heart attack, he doesn't lose his house.
Yeah,
that's good. Compared to here.
That's here we pay a second mortgage to have the insurance.
But if you need a new hip or you got a sore knee, you might wait a couple of years.
Yeah. Ooh.
That's the way it is.
But like I said, you get what you pay for.
But I could go to Mexico when I'm down there for 3 months and get a new hip.
Yeah, I hear the costs are pretty good down there.
Well, and it's cheaper. It's like 20%. So it's just different, like, and we're all paying for it. It's just it's paid for collectively, and then it's used by the person who needs it. So it's okay. I like it.
What's Orly asking, Jim? Where do you get all your info?
Yeah, we'll go back to the science.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, Jim, like when I watch your videos, Jim, you're like, well, this should only be 0.5 ohm, or that should be 0.3 ohm. I know you have your Jim database in your head, but where'd that come from?
There's specs. I mean, Honda publishes specs.
Yep.
Briggs publishes specs. Sometimes I'll take a coil off the shelf that I know is good and measure it and just compare it.
We'll post it too. Yep.
You guys wouldn't believe what I've learned from Jim. The generators I worked on were 2 megawatt. Like it was an entirely different thing. I didn't get in there on a little pot with a blue rheostat and my jeweler's screwdriver and turn something so that I could change my hertz to 62 from 61. I've learned all that from you guys. Like that's something else. It's really cool.
Yeah. That's actually it.
And you guys are self-taught.
They're like, why do you shut the generator off when you do that? Can't you just do it with it on? I'm like,
yeah, the
yes,
cover's off.
But I'm not going to show everybody to do it with it on because you know what's going to happen.
There's always going to be that one.
Exactly.
I want to go back to an earlier comment here, actually from Garbled. I forgot about. I think it was early on before you guys jumped on. Is the AVR just monitoring output voltage and adjusting the exciter power supply accordingly? And it's another it depends answer, because there are some AVRs that there is a feedback loop. It is a negative feedback loop. Yes. Pretty much all AVRs are like that, but sometimes they are either monitoring a reference voltage on the exciter, or you'll see a 6-wire AVR where it actually has 2 wires for the sense winding. It's called. It's basically just 1/2 of the 240 volts to 120 volts going back into the AVR, and it's a comparator circuit, and it will make and there was one, I think, for the EXL 8000. That one has that type of AVR, but what they changed on it in the recent years, instead of the older version, is they got rid of that little blue multi-turn potentiometer, the little rheostat, as you're referring to, Bruce.
That we all
love. They put it as a fixed ratio, so it's just to put a resistor. And I was talking to someone on the Gentech forums on that. And I'm like, what? They changed it? Because I haven't come across that machine in a number of years. But I'm like, really? They really cheaped out, and it's the same as any other.
Well, it's like a non-adjustable carburetor.
It's a non-adjustable. That's essentially what it is, and I thought that was kind of cheesy because ideally, like in a capacitor excited generator, the speed determines the voltage, output voltage, and even the
It's my biggest complaint.
Right. Well, and you could adjust it if you change the microfarad rating of your capacitance. So if you go 5 microfarads higher or lower, it'll actually have an influence on the voltage. But then you're also going to be decreasing your capacity for that generator because now it's not going to have as big of a reservoir.
But it's efficient.
Is less efficient, exactly. So that's the only thing with it's a simpler design. There's less moving parts and there's less wearable items, like you don't have a brush assembly. But in a large megawatt application, look at all the Caterpillar generators of that size, or Kubotas, or any other brand that's in that megawatt range. They're all brushless. But the reason why they have such clean output is because you're not going to put, a few thousand watts on it. You're going to put a couple
100,000,
tens of thousands of watts,
yes.
Load it down, and it's because diesel engines, in order to prevent wet stacking, you have to run them at least 50% a load, so that you keep the temperature up in the combustion chamber, and you don't have the black smoke coming out of there.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta. It's just.
Well, you mentioned. Sorry, you mentioned the negative feedback.
Yes.
Circuit.
Yes.
The little. It's all related and it isn't, right? But on an old lawnmower where you've got the wind vane on the throttle, that's a negative feedback loop.
That's right.
The wind takes it and it takes away some throttle and it adds a little throttle when it comes back, and that's just a negative feedback loop. And it's no different than, in my mind, fluid.
Mm-hmm.
Or electronics or air or whatever. It's all, in my mind, it's all the same.
It's all the same. It all works on the same principle. There's and positive feedback loops are not controllable. Not very.
No, they get away on you, and that's
they go into runaway mode.
When I hold this against the speaker.
Oh yeah.
You got a positive feedback loop, and you can't control it.
One of my complaints that I've had on the generator boards that I often repair, and I'm referring to the system control boards that are usually about $200. The 841.
Is that the capacity you put in for
James? Yeah. No, it's a different one. The Generac,
small,
and some of the Briggs & Strattons too, because Briggs & Stratton owned Generac for a while. It's the 84132GS power regulator board that goes in the N-Bell, and the 83970GS system control board. And that control board is actually talking to the power regulator board in the N-Bell, and it's running a snubber feedback. That's a negative feedback loop. But in the event that system control board circuit fails, that power regulator board is going to go output its full power to the rotor, and you're going to get high voltage spike and blow everything up that's connected to it. If there was a way to redesign the circuit so where if that were to fail, the regulator would just shut down. You just get zero power. Well, at least it's a lot less destructive. But that's where I hear so many people that they overload them.
Yeah.
Those power regulator boards they have a heat sink on the silicon controlled rectifier, and they can only take so much heat, instantaneous power, before they snap and they pop.
Yeah, but on that same vein, I'd asked Jim this a while back. Someone had said, "Oh, this generator is putting out 600 volts, going to burn the house down." And Jim was like, "Whoa, you could only have so many volts out of a generator, right?"
Watts.
Yeah, I mean the way that they're wired. Yeah, I mean for however many turns are in the stator, sure, but it's possible that you can have a small. If there is 600 volts on it that was only designed to have say 240. It's usually because there's a short somewhere, and a higher voltage is feeding back into its exciter winding. It's possible, but usually you would have something more catastrophic fail. Usually on the portable generators, the exciter windings and the battery charge windings will fail first. So the main windings are actually on top of the exciter winding, and the battery charge windings underneath it. They're much thinner wire, also more difficult to get to. When those fail, I found plenty of Generacs where they had their battery charge windings blown up because they don't use they don't use the battery, or the battery died, they take the battery out, figure, I'm not going to need the battery, I'm just going to use the pull cord. Well, when they start it up, I mean, there used to be there's supposed to be a 10 amp fuse in line with that battery cable, so it doesn't blow up the winding. Some of the earlier Generacs didn't have that.
Is that right? I did not know that.
They did not have it. So like the 7000 EXL that I have, the original, the first revision 0, didn't have it. So like a lot of people were blowing up those rectifiers and blowing up the battery charge windings. So
I was surprised even on the 10,000 EXL, there was no circuit breaker between the stator and the 50 amp plug. And I don't even think there was a ground wire. I think it was just the 2 hot wires, and
because it was
right to the
designed
stator.
Right, it's designed for a welder, it's a floating neutral. There's no reference to ground, and that's how the Winco, that 8,000 watt Winco generator that I have, it's a floating neutral, and it's got some weird old school like NEMA big 50 amp plugs, and it's got this weird CS plug that's a California standard plug for the output. I wound up buying that. I spent $40 for it just so I can test it.
Yeah.
It's great to have, but how often do you come across that? Because it's built in 1996.
I've only ever seen one, and you have it.
I have it. I mean, it's great to have. I have it on my load bank when I...
okay, 96 is not old.
No, it's...
No.
This machine is
To
actually
me.
in very good shape. I got it running, and the guy just didn't take care of it. It took some work, but it got the valves all squared away, and now actually the compression was higher after running it for a while. So instead of getting 120 psi, now I was getting more around 144. The last I checked, so it was good. It all that carbon had to burn off. He didn't adjust the valves, but it takes the full 8,000 watts, no problem. But you need to bond the neutral to ground in those cases if you're going to use it as a portable generator. If you're going to use it to connect to a house here in the United States, anyway, you don't want you get that loop current. If, say, for example, and every ordinance here in Connecticut is different. Like when I installed my uncle's 20,000, I helped him install his 20,000 watt Generac air cooled with natural gas, and the only thing that the inspector got us on was that he wanted a ground rod at the generator. But he said, and I said, well, wait, it gets grounded through. It's supposed to be a floating neutral. It's got to go
back at the garage or at the house.
Right, it's got to go back to the house ground rod. He's like, no, you don't. You bond it at the main panel, but you connect it to. You can never have enough ground rods. This guy tells me.
Once it's left the house, you can't have your neutral connected to the bond at any location past the house.
Correct. So that's why he said, it's bonded at the main panel, let it go there. And then if you can split
my emergency setup would probably put the average electrical inspector into a cardiac arrest.
I'm sure.
Does it, wait, I got something that'll, what is it? Just 2 wires twisted together?
I wouldn't say that.
I just got a cord with a generator, and I've made a video on this before, like how not to make a cord.
Oh no!
But it's a great cord, right? I don't know if you can see this, but
that's
not too
bad. That's
bad.
okay. That happens to everybody.
All right. It's not too bad. It's supposed to be 4 wires. It's 3. Okay, that's fine. Let's take a look at the other end. It's one of these.
Oh, the suicide cord.
Yeah.
And
I will make fun of anyone.
Some duct tape.
Now we're talking there.
Anybody that's doing that should not even be allowed.
Not even a pigtail on it.
Not even a wire nut.
Well, you know what? If it was soldered and taped, I would be okay with that.
Here in Connecticut, you have to have E1 certification in order to comment on and actually do stuff to the house, to modify anything with the house. With portable generators, it's not really regulated, so
I haven't paid anybody to do anything in my house electrical, and I've been here 34 years.
Well,
I think I'm qualified.
I've done modifications too, but I mean, it's nothing
I think I'm
major like that. But the thing is that when you see, I've heard so many people that, I'll just connect it, backfeed it through the dryer. I'm like, yeah, it'll work.
Or the dryer.
No, but that's what they'll do.
And a lot of people do it.
A lot of people do it. They do, and if they know what they're doing, if they shut off the main breaker, okay, things can work if you know what you're doing. But why leave?
But if you happen to die during the emergency and somebody else comes in to
Yep.
undo what you've done. That's the problem.
Well, that's it, and it comes down to liability. If your house insurance, if you wire it wrong, or if you put a lug that's not torqued down properly,
Yep.
you're going to electrical fires are real.
So I've taken, because of my background, but it was on DC, but DC is no different than AC because there's
Yeah.
still lots of juice going through.
Yeah.
Oh, DC is even more.
I've had
dangerous.
the lockout tagout course, right?
Yeah.
Where you put the lock on the, like,
Yeah, we do
if I
that.
was going to do anything dumb like putting a generator in my house, the first thing I would do would go downstairs, turn off the 100-amp breaker, lock it out, tag it out, put my name, my journeyman number, and my address and phone number on that tag, so that if anything happens, it's within the property.
Right, and
then a certified journeyman would go down there if I died, in the electrical storm. He would go down there and see that tag out, and he'd go, "Oh, okay. Oh, Bruce is dead now. Let's better just leave that on there until we figure out everything he did."
right. No, right. There's
And that's the games that's the rules I play by. But
and you got to play by the rules.
but I do run I have a double male-ended connector. I have to say that.
The ignorance of people that make those. I mean,
Well,
then
That's the problem.
They're playing Russian roulette with their life. I'm sorry.
here's a question for you. There's no neutral, right?
Yes, there is.
Is there?
Well, the
Oh,
neutral
wait.
At
the neutral's the
120
ground.
volts.
Oh,
This is
no,
connected to your
that's-
panel. At 120 volts, if you have a floating bonded generator, you'll probably get nothing, right? Because you're
No.
running it all through the
Is
ground.
that a 3-prong dryer? Is that the 3-prong dryer cord?
It's 3-prong. Yeah, it's
No,
two
it's
hot
just a
wires and
110
ground,
110 ground.
right?
Yeah, I think that looks like a
That's
welder.
not 110 neutral.
No, I think that's
No,
110,
well,
110
X and
ground,
Y
I
hot.
think.
It's X and Y hot, and then it should be neutral. Normally, with the
Yeah, it's-
Hey, my stove looks like that, but my
Oh,
dryer
is it
doesn't.
neutral?
modern stoves have an L14, either an L1440 or an L1450, and it does have the 4 prongs. So X and Y hot, neutral, and then earth ground. What the older houses for their dryers and for their stoves have a 3 prong. So you have X and Y hot, and then the neutral. So
I got
what happen
both.
so you have the 3 main current carrying conductors, but you have to ground through your neutral. So the neutral and the ground are bonded through at the appliance, in this case the stove or the dryer. And new NEC says that you can't do that anymore. Anything that any new builds has to have the grounds and neutral separated, because a lot of the newer, one, it's safer to do. You don't want to split that current between the 2 bus bars. And 2, a lot of these newer stoves have all these digital control panels, and if you get even the slightest spike, it will blow up that $400 control board, and you pretty much got yourself a paperweight of an appliance at that point.
I couldn't even tell you what's behind my stove. It's been so long.
I replaced the board in mine. You're right, $300.
It's expensive. I wound up getting lucky because I just did that for our stove downstairs. It was spent like $50 for it, because it's the push switches. You have to mash on it in order for it to register. Turning up the temperature. My wife was complaining about it. I says, and I got sick and tired of it too. So I got lucky, and I replaced it, and everything was fine. But I was ready to take it apart. And I bought the micro switches for it, but you know how many micro switches are on those things?
Oh.
It would have taken me hours to put that back together and replace them all. I said,
my stove had 16 connectors on the board.
All the relays.
One. It was a Frigidaire.
Yep.
Glass top stove, electric.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I
But
got.
it was all that bubble display, switches and stuff.
Yep.
And I said, "What do you replace on this?" And I looked at the parts list. There was only one part number.
Right.
There wasn't all kinds of. There
Yeah.
was just one, and it just said control board. And I was like, "Okay, $336." I'm like, "Seriously?"
Yeah.
But I unplugged, clip, and
It was pretty straightforward. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
all the techs do. And you look at the boards, and I actually have it behind my movie theater seating here. You can't
with
see
mine, you turn the stove on, it never should heat off. It just kept going up and up and up and up and up.
Yeah, because there's
Finally,
no
it went
feedback.
off.
The thermocouple probably failed, and that's another common problem. But I changed it
There
out.
it is. I'll be right back.
I changed it out, and everything was fine after that. But it's ridiculous the amount of money that you have to spend on those things. But it's cheaper to do that than to actually go and get a whole new appliance.
Well, the stove was, I think, $1,000. They wanted $400 to come out with a service man plus the parts. I'm like, I'll buy a new stove before I do that. And then I went on
Mhm.
Amazon and I saw appliance repair, whatever the hell it was, and they had the parts list, and I was like, there's
YouTube.
only one part. I thought there'd be 100 switches, thermocouples, all that. It was just one.
One.
It just said control board, $336.
Yep.
I'm like, okay.
Great.
Yeah, it's that's just how it goes. I mean, I was happy to spend $50 and swore at it for maybe about a half an hour, and I put it all back together, and it worked great. But
You talk about batteries and stuff. It's a funny story. My central air, we installed the central air here in 1994, just after my oldest daughter was born. So
Right.
it's almost 40 years old or 30 years old.
Wow.
I've never replaced the battery in the thermostat. All right. Now, 32, a AA battery, almost 30 years old. Okay. So today, don't ask me why. I'm sitting in my bedroom, we're watching a hockey game. All of a sudden, the air wouldn't shut off. And I'm like, why is it still
Yep,
going
didn't
on?
get the call to shut off.
I look at my thing, and the display that shows the time is good, but the temperature was blank. And I'm looking, I said, I haven't had this thermostat off the wall in 30 years.
Since your kid was born.
So I pull it off the wall, and I look at the battery. It didn't even have a date on it. That's because it's 1994.
Wasn't
when I put
fuzzy?
it in.
The battery wasn't fuzzy?
No.
No alkaline
You know
damage.
what?
It was actually a Rayovac.
now that
Cat
Remember
on it?
Shaquille O'Neal in those commercials?
Yeah, but it had no
You know
Rayovac
what?
with the cat.
Now that
the old
we
one.
go to Mexico every year,
Wow.
well, almost every year, because we didn't go in 2020, I go downstairs just before Christmas and I replace every battery in the place. And I actually, there's a few that you might forget about, right?
Right.
The one in the sump. I got a high water battery in the sump.
Yep.
Stuff like that, and I replace everything, and then I just take them out to the garage, and anything, they're usually AA's. And anything that's over 1.5 volts, I just use in flashlights and stuff. And anything that's under 1.5 volts,
I didn't even realize this thing had a battery in it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't have
wire
thought anything that lasted that
transformer
long. I would
downstairs.
not have thought about.
No, but it must be
Mhm.
because look at all the multicolored displays that you see. That takes battery, that takes milliamps, that takes
Yeah.
picoamps, and that
Yep.
it has to be factored in if you're going to run it off a battery. When we moved into our house, we had so I just did a video on this. It's a EWC controls board where you needed a battery powered thermostat to run the central air and also the heating for 2 zones. Well, I wanted to switch it out to one of those smart Wi-Fi thermostats, and I didn't want to use batteries anymore. So you have to use the common wire. It's running on 24 volts,
Mhm.
and all good and dandy.
Oh, from the
thermostat control board, right?
From the
The doorbell
transformer on
transformer
the-
in the
on the-
basement.
Yeah, the doorbell. Yeah, it's a step down transformer, very
Yeah.
small, and it goes and it's got two.
It doesn't take anything.
Yeah.
Right. But what happened was that the control board didn't support the Wi-Fi thermostats because it was a master and slave type of setup. The downstairs had to be turned on before the upstairs would actually operate. And they said that it was an obsoleted board about 20 years ago when my house was built. My house was built in 2004, so we're not talking that far. But they said, yeah, they stopped using it right at the tail end of when your house was built. So they're like, here's the newest one, and it will handle all the Wi-Fi thermostats. So, but I had to figure out how to set the dip switches, put the thermal couple into the supply plenum. It was a decent amount of work, but if you want to have the ability to go on your phone and hey Siri or hey Google, go and turn on the air conditioning. Oh, I don't want to turn on now.
I'm a high tech guy, and I don't do that.
My buddy had a ring thermostat, one of those round things,
Yeah.
the round, and it misfunctioned last winter.
Yep.
And he got home, his house was like 92 degrees.
Oh
Because
no.
it wouldn't shut off, and it cost him a fortune because the guy had to replace all the stuff on the furnace,
Yeah,
the
the
control
burn.
boards and stuff. He said this ring, whatever it was, did something to the control boards. Yeah, I don't know how it could do that. But
Normally that's why thermal cooling. So you see, and I talked to he's the engineer for 40 plus years. He walked me through it. So anyone that's looking to switch this board out, talk to John over at WC. He's a great guy.
Plug.
Yeah, plug. No, I plugged him because he helped out. I mean, I didn't know anything about it. It took me a little time to figure it out myself, but I was happy to figure it out. And I told my make available forum for these kind of questions.
Nice.
The way that that the control board set up, it'll actually shut down if it gets too cold or if it gets too hot, so that it doesn't burn up. And he's like, that's very important to put in there. And most guys that are HVAC guys that are installing their systems will forget to put that $25 thermocouple in there. It's forced hot air. There's really hot air coming off of there. It's like on the 140, 150 degree range. But it'll shut down if it goes beyond 176 degrees, and it will do a lockout for like 5 minutes to let it cool off. I mean,
my thermostat is a 2-wire thermostat.
That's okay. So you have the old mercury switch.
Yeah.
Okay.
The thermostat is not mercury. The new thermostat's not mercury. It's got batteries in it.
Batteries.
And I think it does some kind of secret talking over those 2 wires down to the furnace downstairs. Everything's new. Everything's new.
That's it. And they're now set. They're usually 5 wires or 7 wires.
Yeah.
So, and thankfully the guys ran 7 wires in the house. So I only used 5.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't have a heat pump or
mine's a 2-wire on off.
Like that. But
We still have mercury contactors at work that we're slowly switching out to SCRs.
Oh,
but we still
no,
have
my garage.
mercury.
My garage is a
Not much to go wrong with that.
My garage is a
no,
mercury.
there's
set,
very
right?
little, and generators will power that no problem. But I mean, we had Hurricane Irene back in 2011, and we were out of power for 8 days. And I rigged up the furnace and the hot water heater, which was fuel oil fired, and it ran fine. But when I moved here, we don't lose power. We're right next to a substation within 1,000 feet. So and we're on the hospital line, so we'll never lose power. I more just at this point collect generators and try to sell them as quickly as I can. But what happened here for us was after so long, those silicon controlled rectifiers, they'll either fail shorted on, meaning that the burner will keep going and it'll never shut off, or they will fail open, which is ideally what would want to happen. That you basically get no heat. It'll call for heat, but then it won't ignite.
Right.
But,
well, I use in my garage, I have a mercury switch.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I did it, I wanted to go down to freezing to run it. You guys would call it 36 degrees. We would call it +2 Celsius. So they were so expensive. Those low temperature thermostats were in the hundreds of dollars. And back when I built my garage, my wife and I didn't have any money. Like even $50 was a lot of money to us back then. So I just offset the thermostat. So it's just like this on the wall. It's still like that today. Still like that today. And it just runs 15 degrees off.
Okay. All right. Hey,
Very nice.
And my brother-in-law is an instrumentation guy, and he looked at that and he says, "Your thermostat's crooked." And I went, "Yeah." He said, "How come?" I said, "I did that on purpose." Yep. He said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, it just offsets it so that when it heats up and it turns on and calls for heat and no heat, it's at a different." He says, "That's really smart. I never thought about that. I'm going to go home and do that right now."
Necessity is the mother of invention. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's still that way now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's we're talking about HVAC systems, but that's also one of the main loads that a generator during an emergency situation that you would want to have running.
Yeah,
and I feel terrible for the people that have heat pumps or a split system because you need a very hefty generator to run that system.
Well, to run the water, eh?
Run the water, yeah. I mean, yeah. So
the glycol,
the glycol, yeah. Those systems are, it takes more power to start them than it is to run them, right? And then if you have something that's very low, electrical demand, like say a propane fired water heater or a propane fired furnace, even a fuel oil fired, that's a
16-volt AC relay might not. Yeah, it might be flaky.
It may be flaky, right?
During that heavy use.
Exactly, and they're usually wired to a 15 amp breaker, and that's it. But again, if that waveform is not clean, and a lot of these smart controllers now will actually shut down if you're not exactly 60 hertz. And it goes back to that. If you're not exact 60 hertz and there's too much harmonic content, it'll shut itself down because it's trying to protect itself.
Hey, I actually have some generator questions for Jim and for Gary, actually.
Well, I might be out of the
All right, let's do it.
Well, my lead man, Wayne, nice guy, he got a GP 5500 for free because it wasn't making power. Runs beautiful.
Yep.
And I said to him, first thing, try and reflash it because the guy hadn't used it in a while. and he tried it with the drill or motor, or even a 9-volt battery real quick, whatever. Still nothing. Okay. I think he's getting 3 volts or something like that.
Yep.
So
magnetism.
he went out and bought new brushes.
Okay.
And he found a place. It was cheap Chinese stuff, an AVR and new brushes. And I said to him, well, before you do all that, you really want to look and see what do the slip rings look like and stuff like that. So anyway, he watched one of your videos, Jim, and he took it apart. He cleaned off the slip rings with Scotch Brite. He put, the slip rings, put the brushes in, still nothing. So then he changed the AVR, still nothing. And I'm saying, okay. The next thing I said to him, I was asking him to look for burns, like burns around the stator or anything like that.
Visual.
Yep,
Yeah,
or any kind of heat stress. Yep.
If any of the strings are burnt, anything like that. If he doesn't find anything like that, now he's going to have to get into the James Condon ohmmeter and check the different windings and all that. But I guess my question is, would any of your videos, Jim, on the GP series be good to watch on that, or do they all, or is there specific ones that would check every single connection on the rotor stator to make sure, and what to check?
I haven't had power problems that I've
GP?
recorded on a GP 5500, but I mean, it's a Honda clone, and they're all, I don't want to say they're identical. There are little differences, but it's just testing the ohms for the rotor, testing it for each of the windings.
Could it be a short somewhere, though, that would cause it, or would it just be something damaged?
Yeah, it would be a short insulation failure. That generator has permanent magnets too. So, I mean, you're not going to lose magnetism. If it's not running, it's because of an issue.
Well, take that the AVR and the brush. We'll leave the brush in there, but take the AVR completely out of the equation. The power it with 12 volts. Do you get voltage? Well, no.
Wait, say it again. You said power. Take the AVR plug off, right?
Right. So
what are you saying? Power.
Take the AVR completely out. So I did on the Megaforce video, Megaforce generator that I did. I got this for nothing, and I needed to see if the exciter winding was good. But the quick and dirtiest way, you don't even really have to go through the ohm ratings, because if you think about it, you can actually have what's called a flying short. You could measure the ohms correctly when it's at rest, but when it's running, there might be a flying short because one of the insulation is breaking down somewhere. The quickest and easiest that I've had is doing that method. Take a regular 40-watt incandescent bulb with 2 spade connectors, plug it into the exciter winding, the 2 wires, and then take your battery of 12 volts, and then making sure the polarity is correct. Usually on the Generac and Briggs, it's the positive brush is the closest to the end bearing that's in the end bell, and the negative is the closest to the engine. Power it with 12 volts and then see if that light bulb lights up. If it does, that tells you that the exciter winding is healthy. It can support a load. You could also check on the outlets. You see if it'll power the light bulb there. And that's the quickest and dirtiest way to see if the windings are good at all, because someone had asked, and James has asked me too, it's tough to find specs on some of these overseas generators. You don't know. I mean, there's a general rule of thumb of, an exciter winding will be in this range of, say, 1.8 to 2.8 volts or ohms. And, you could kind of guess. And
it would be ohms, not meg ohms.
Gary, do you have a video on that?
Wire.
With the 40-watt bulb. Do you have any video on that?
That would be good.
Let me.
I definitely love to show it to him, because he's asking me all these questions, and he's like, "Oh, just call your friend Jim. We'll do a live."
We could do that.
Yeah,
I have a no power playlist too, which has tons of things, but they're all different. Every problem's kind of different. So
that's what I miss about work. We would all sit around at coffee time, right? And that's when the real work got done. And you get the scientific guy with the pen, and he's got a back of napkin, and he's showing you a drawing, and he's got you this and that. Another guy comes up with an idea, and another guy comes up with an idea. That's the part I miss about work, being connected.
I don't know if I can
joke.
I don't know if I can copy it here. I'll put that link in there. Here's the link to that video.
But I tell you, if you know how to use an ohm meter, which means you know Ohm's law,
Right, you know Ohm's law, right? And to
you
correct
can
myself,
you
1.8 to 2.8 ohms, not
you
mega ohms. Sorry.
you know, you might be working on a $200,000 piece of equipment, but you have to know your battery and your ground and your flow and your draw and your
Yep.
that's
Yep.
it. It's Ohm's law, man.
Yep.
All right,
Who's
I
oh
got it.
But yeah, so basically that video that on that link there shows how I do that, and you can basically just test the windings to make sure that they can support a load. And so on the GPs, just like any other generator, as long as he's connected the AVR correctly, if you reverse because the field is polarity sensitive, if you flash it in reverse, so you put the positive to the negative, negative to the positive, you're not going to get anything. It's
Well,
not.
let me ask you,
Right.
stay in that vein. If he had a battery, say a 12-volt battery, a little low on juice,
Yeah.
and he took the two wires
Mhm.
and the positive he put into the small spade of the 110-volt outlet, and real quick go like that, and the generator jumps for a second, and you excite the fields or whatever. I mean, is it true that positive is still what am I trying to say? 12-volt battery, positive and negative, versus a 110 outlet on your generator that's got the little lug and the big lug. The little one is the positive. It's the do you
I
put it
see.
in-
Is the hot and the
Let's
and
see.
the,
Yeah,
neg-
the hot
and
is
the
neutral.
wide one the neutral?
Yeah,
They're
are you
not
talking
those
about
windings
that where he could have flashed it wrong? Or
he definitely would. If he did that, he definitely flashed it wrong. And because
I would never try it.
those windings are not connected, at least
Okay.
not by
would he have
themselves.
damaged anything doing that though? Or
For a 12, how big of a 12, like a little motorcycle battery? Probably
not even. I think he used a 9-volt battery even or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I don't know. You probably wouldn't have caused
Okay.
any kind of damage.
Because all I said to
Bigger
him was
risk of
take the
damaging the battery, I
positive
think.
to the
Yeah.
little and the negative to the big, and
Yeah.
He might have.
I
I mean,
that
if
was
there's
the
any,
right advice.
there's no control boards in there. That it's just an AVR. So he might have popped the AVR possibly, but I don't think so. If it's that small of a battery, you would need a really hefty amount of current for a reverse polarity. Usually the diodes would protect it anyway. In the AVR. So I would show them that video. That video could help. And if it does power, the light bulbs, then you got a good healthy generator head. It's just a matter of making sure that the AVR is connected correctly. Another thing on the Briggs and Generac ones, so on the spade connectors that connect the exciter windings, usually it's blue and red, so blue number 2 and red number 6, and sometimes they might even just be both black colored. If you reverse them, you're going to lose your voltage regulation because one of those is bonded to neutral. And if you reverse them, now you're actually powering the voltage regulation circuit through the exciter winding, and that winding has resistance. It's actually going to only power that regulation circuit to a degree. You're not going to get any adjustment on your.
Sounds like you're speaking through experience.
Yes. Yep, I did. It took me a sec, because then when I looked at the schematic, and it took me a lot longer than I'm going to admit on camera.
I bet you all four of us, nobody's afraid of trying anything, though.
No.
Like I have no fear. Like
as long as you try it and it doesn't.
Especially when you call up somebody, it's like, how much?
Yeah, that's my fear.
Yeah.
Exactly, Ken. That's my fear. You want
That's
what?
it. Most of the outdoor power equipment places around here, they won't work on the generator heads. They don't have the expertise.
Oh no,
they won't.
Even
They'll work on the gas engine all day long. They'll do
motor shops.
Motor shops,
generator
won't
heads.
touch them. Yeah, won't touch
Anything. This plate compactor that I worked on, the guy took it into a certified small engine mechanic in town, and the guy said, "I can't fix it. Sorry, it can't be fixed." And I had it running in a half an hour.
Well, and that's it. I mean, there's just certain things that they just won't touch. I can understand liability, but I think it's just a lot of the shops just don't have the troubleshooting experience like what we've been able to accomplish, with our channel.
Well, and what you and I charge per hour if you're doing something for somebody,
right?
It's probably around 20% of what a shop would charge. And I don't have a problem with the shops. They got workman's compensation, rent, business licenses, all that stuff.
Business license,
and they're competing on a smaller basis. They're competing with us backyard hacks, but us backyard hacks are also working on stuff they don't even want to see.
Right. Well, because like,
Yeah.
believe it or not, you guys like to go and play with the push mowers and fix them and resell them. I don't have the time for that.
Right.
To
And
me, push mowers are low revenue. I don't want to deal with them.
most of
I
my
don't have
work
to. If it's
comes
simple
from a
tune-ups,
small engine mechanic play, or no, he's a Dick's.
yeah, Dixie Chopper.
It's from Dick's Auto, right? And
Oh, Dick's Auto, okay.
all of his stuff that his customers bring to him, he brings to me.
Oh, okay.
'Cause I talked to his two sons that work in the business with him, and,
Yep.
and I said, "Well, when was the last time you had a piston in your hand?" And he said, "Oh, I can't. It would have to be 10 years. 10 years, and it was probably in my own garage."
Yeah.
And these guys are mechanics, right? But they're not. They're technicians. They're not mechanics.
Right. And it's a different discipline altogether. You usually don't find both of those disciplines in a single person.
They can't be bothered. I mean, those. Oh, I dropped the needle valve. Oh no,
Yeah.
where did it go?
But even I've had ACE certified car mechanics say, I don't know, something's going on with my lawnmower. I'm like, you can work on it. You can work on a car with an onboard diagnostics and figure that out.
With two ACUs and
with
a
the
thing,
wacky sensor in the buried inside the engine that is causing all these problems. You can figure that out, but you can't figure out a lawnmower.
Exactly.
Help me
I
out
bought
with the picture here.
bought a leaf blower from a guy from an automotive garage. When I pulled in, I'm like, oh no. I bought it from, the whole thing was a mess. Like all the lines were plugged in wrong. Just everything about it that was touched was wrong. But it's just it's a different skill.
What kind of a machine was it?
It was just a leaf blower, a cheap
leaf
backpack leaf blower.
Yeah.
2-stroke.
Yeah. I mean, it's, to me, the handheld stuff like the chainsaws, the weed whackers, the leaf blowers, even the push mowers. To me, it's low revenue. So I charge $80 an hour for my shop, and then if there's a machine that is 10 years or older, and you can usually tell by the serial or if it's stamped on it somewhere, my shop rate immediately goes to $100 an hour, because I'm now going to have to research. I'm going to have to look for parts that may not be readily available. I've had to import parts from Denmark for Honda. It's ridiculous. I mean, but if you're going to do the job, and some people want you to do the job, well, you're going to pay for it.
I've only had about 3 or 4 customers that don't care what it costs.
Well, right? I try to be upfront, as honest as I can with that, because there's certain people that most of them understand, right? They understand that there's a cost for labor, there's a cost for time. You're not, and I tell people this all the time on the forums. If I'm charging you $80 an hour and it takes me it only takes me 15 minutes to fix it, I'm still charging you the hour. And someone even had the gumption to go and ask me, well, why are you charging me $80 for something that took you 15 minutes? Because you're not paying for my time. You're paying for my experience to fix it in 15 minutes that you couldn't figure out in 2 hours. So
plus,
I'd be the first to say,
I would have to bet that you've got an hour's worth of time invested into that trouble even before it came in the door.
Oh, I'm sure. And what they put the time in first, and if they when they said, hey, I need your help, okay. Before I even jumped on tonight, I had a gentleman, and he was nice. I've worked on his lawnmower before. He snapped the mower belt, the mowing deck belt, and he's like, "Well, where do I go?" And I says, "All right, we'll go here. I think I can do it." I says, "All right, well, if you need help, let me know. But go to partstree.com. Figure out your part number, and send him on his way." But you fix it nice because you fix it twice sometimes.
I had a guy tonight that I stopped to look at, like a pre-service where I wanted to know what the issue was so I could order parts or whatever.
Yep.
And I like not picking up the equipment until I know I have the parts. So I looked at it. One of his deck hangers on a John Deere LA, whatever the hell it was.
LA 115?
No, I think it was a 125. No, actually it was just called a 115 automatic is what it was called.
Okay.
But anyway, it had, the Briggs 19 horse, whatever. But the problem was one of his deck hangers, the hitch pin fell out.
Yep.
So the deck hanger fell, and he scalped the hell out of his lawn. His lawn looked terrible. I mean, and I said to the guy, why didn't you stop after the first line?
Right.
He went all over his whole. It looked like a blind person cut your hair.
Scalped it.
I was like, holy crap.
There's not a pill you can take for stupid.
So anyway, I texted him, and he wants me to pick up the unit like maybe Tuesday, and I'll get all the parts, whatever, and I'll tune it up and do everything else. He says, oh, yeah, you tuned it up a year or two ago. No, 4 years ago, because I have all the records,
Sure.
And this thing is beat beat up. So
Oh.
anyway, I look underneath, I see the thing's hanging there, so I put it back onto the pin, but I didn't have a hitch pin or a nail or a counter pin.
Yeah. Yep.
So I texted him. I said, "Look, I'm not driving back out." He's about 4 miles away. I said, "I'm not driving back up to your house, but if you got a counter pin or even a nail or something, for now,
For now,
Hanger.
A nail and a washer.
cut your grass." Now, he's like, "Oh, thank you." And then he comes back and he's like, "Do I really need to tune it up? Do I really need?" And I'm like, "Really?" I said, "I went over there, didn't charge you anything. I went over there, told you what was wrong, told you how you can get it going." Now he's like, "Do I really need to have you pick it up and service it and all that?" I'm like, "Really?"
I feel you on that one there, Ken.
Because he's running from the money.
Sometimes you right. Well, sometimes you and I have this problem too, and it really shouldn't be a problem, but it is because people like to take advantage of your knowledge and expertise. And sometimes in those situations, it's like, okay, well, if you're calling me, I'll jump on a call for like 10 minutes or so. I mean, it's 10 minutes. It's not going to be the end of the world. But if you're keeping me on the phone for 20 minutes, a half hour, 45 minutes, you know what? Hey, I'm going to charge you for this. And if
I
you're
better
gonna,
watch it next time I call.
there's people that will go and say, "Hey, well, is it going to take that long? Can I just wait for it?" I says, "Well, then I haven't done this, but I mean, I would want to do it. I mean, if you're going to sit there and watch me work, well, then my labor rate goes to that $100 an hour because if you're going to learn something from me, you know, I'll be a dick. I don't care."
I used to always do that as a kid. I'd follow anyone around the house there to fix the furnace, the hot water heater, whatever it was.
Yeah,
I'd follow them around and just stare at them.
Yeah,
That's why you're that's why you're where you are now.
But as a kid, you know, as a kid, fine. But as a grown adult, I mean,
True.
I had that Seaberg jukebox that I still want. I mean, I remember the guy. He came from Hamden, Connecticut, and I don't know if he's still doing it. I think his son took over the business. He would come over, he would work on it, he would get, and then he'd call, "Hey, the jukebox repairman's coming over," and I would even take school off because that's how excited I was to see him work on it because I've never seen, oh, look at all the lights in there were actually vacuum tubes, but you know, you absorb when you're a kid, you absorb it like as a sponge. Yeah, see, exactly. You know, I'm still trying to
Nice.
I still have to. I would love to have that AQ 160 one day.
You know, when I was a kid, I tried to make a go-kart, right, with an engine in it.
I
never succeeded. I never succeeded. But what I learned from that just made me, and then I kind of lost it for 20 years, you know, like you get into life, kids, mortgage.
Sure.
Yep.
And then I started realizing that I could maybe save myself $150 and tear something apart.
Yeah.
And realize that if you can't get it back together again, you're not further off because you wouldn't have gained anything anyway. And because if it's broken, if it's broken, you can't fix it.
Right. And
You
I
can't
think
break it again.
You know, all of us here on the panel are, you know, we want to learn how to fix our own stuff. We don't want to be reliant on other people to have to fix our things, you know. And if we're able to pass our knowledge along, hey, you know, I would be the first to admit that I am not a very good teacher at all. Even in some of my videos, I've tried to do a little bit better. I'd love to be able to do a dual angle at the same time, like a picture in picture.
No, that's not it though. The dual angle is not the issue. It's putting your thoughts forward.
Exactly. And it's a hard skill to learn. Some people are born with it and they can do it, you know, like that. Other people it struggles, and you know, it takes time to develop that skill. But sometimes, you know, you're able just to absorb the knowledge, and yeah, you can figure it out and do that. And a lot of people just don't have the patience. Like I can sit here and work on a little circuit board with surface mount devices the size of a pinhead and looking at a schematic and figuring out what's going on with it and fixing that. But who's going to do that?
You know what? I just bought two little LED lights with the USB charger.
Sure.
The damn little female clip broke off inside there, and it was 3 days old. And the size of that solder, it's just a 2-wire off the USB connector.
Yeah,
the other 7 are abandoned, right?
Yep.
I'm going to fix that. It's 2 little solder connections that broke off, and that's all that was holding it on there.
Yeah.
Like you think it would be something else to hold that. You know, when you plug it in, you put a force on that thing when you.
You would think. I mean,
it's Chinesium junk. It's Chinesium junk.
Yeah. The good ones have, you know, it's a type of adhesive. It's a neutral curing adhesive that's designed for the PCBs. Yeah. Oh, I remember having. I mean, when some of the early phones came out, you had this massive like proprietary charger, and
Yeah.
they stuck out so
Mhm.
far off the phone,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you as much as you moved a little bit, and it wouldn't charge anymore.
Yep.
Well, at least the industry learned from that mistake. You can't have.
Except on my LED light that I just ordered.
Yeah.
Hey,
What a
talking about
POS.
fixing stuff, has anyone ever fixed an old Weller soldering station?
Oh, that would be something.
I
How
have
would you solder it without your soldering
What
iron?
did you do to it?
Well,
Did you overheat it?
I have an old one from the 80s, okay, that I
The blue
pirated.
one with the coil.
Yeah, exactly, with the coil of sponge, all that, right?
Oh.
But it'll heat, and then it won't heat, then it'll heat, then it won't heat, and I'm like, what should I really check for on that?
Oh, coil right
Coil
inside,
right off the bat,
right
yeah.
off the coil,
Yep.
Inside the box or in the
Yep.
gun itself? In the box.
Yep.
right off the coil, just like your dryer element
Yeah,
in
'cause
the
it's got the
or
pot on it
your
where
element
you
in the
use
stove.
heat
Same
and-
thing as an element in the stove.
Okay, yeah, it's got the rocker switch that lights up in the
Yeah.
pot, you know.
Someone had said
Could be
to
the
me,
rocker switch. I never thought about that. I don't have
Yeah.
one. I just have the ones I had.
It's a lit rocker. you know.
Came from where I used to work, and it's just a little tiny soldering irons with you plug them into the wall and they heat up, and that's it.
Yeah, I've had this thing since '83, I think it is. I
Uh,
love it though. It's a light blue Weller, you know, with the
Yeah.
sponge and
I still have
It's
one.
not the pistol one though, eh?
no,
I
no, it's a,
I
it's
have
a
the pistol one. I have the
pencil.
140 watt pistol one, and I've had that for over 10 years now. I had an old Radio Shack one, but I didn't understand at the time that you have to change the tips out every so often.
Oh,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Radio Shack Micronta. I remember that.
Micronta,
name.
yeah.
Well, they're
I got that for
the tip
Christmas.
is
one year.
resistive, right? Is
Yeah,
the-
yeah. It's just it's an inductive heat, but
I had one of those with the light on it would beep every time you hit the switch.
The one I have, all the ones I have just run on heat.
Yep.
From
No,
from pinpoint pencil to 140 watt.
Yeah, and I use that for quick and easy jobs, but then I got an entire arsenal of solder stuff because
I'm sure you do.
I got
You're
almost
just that kind of a guy.
I have like $1,800 of and this is over many years, but I got almost $1,800 worth of soldering tools, rework tools, hotter rework stations. Just and the hot tweezers were the recent acquisition, and that just makes things a lot easier when you're working on small devices like that. But having the pencil iron is a very with the different tips is a great that's a great tool. I've done a lot of work with that.
Yeah.
But the hot tweezers really does come in handy because it's basically two soldering irons in one, and you can just take the little component right off without even thinking about it twice.
My solder sucker blew up, and I haven't bought a new one, and I really miss
No.
that stupid thing.
Someone had told me
boy.
actually it was on the video that I did for you, James. Someone had told me about this. So I have a Hako 808 desoldering gun. It's basically just a vacuum pump, and then it's
That's
got
nice.
heating.
Yeah.
And it's nice, but I found out someone had told me, hey, you may want to look at replacing that because it's discontinued. Sure enough, the thing that the heating element, some wackadoo on eBay wanted $300 for it because it's new old stock, and I'm like, up yours. I'm not going to go and do that. I found this obscure electronics website, but they accepted PayPal. I paid $68 for it, which was fair. That's what it would what it would normally cost new. And I grabbed it because it doesn't. This is the only heating element that actually fits this gun, and I spent like $300 for that years ago. I think I bought it at a pinball. Over in Allentown, Pennsylvania, there's a Pin Fest. They had a table there where they were selling soldering kits. They were selling soldering tools because everyone that's working on 1980s and 1970s pinballs, you need those kind of tools. And those
It's like an electromagnetic switching machine. That's
Yeah.
what they are.
Yeah, exactly. And those guys made out like bandits. I mean, selling those Hako stations like they were candy. I was grateful to have it because I still have it to this day. But it's good to have extra parts because now the new Hako desoldering gun, which comes in real handy, you don't damage the board or anything like that. It's like another $300. I'm like $68, $300. I mean, that's a pretty easy decision.
I've been soldering since I was a teenager, which is a long time ago. And I had a hard time learning how to weld. And you know what it finally turned out to be? Was that it took all my courage to take a 90 amp thing and drive it straight into ground.
Yep.
That just goes against of my electronics, physical, electromagnetic training. It's like taking an outlet from the house and sticking it right on the ground. and once I got over that, I learned how to weld. I took a course though, James. I took a course.
Nice.
Yeah,
You
the
should.
cool-
You
of
should
course,
take
a hard
course.
nut
Yes,
for sure.
definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I have a flux core welder from Chicago Electric, the cheap Harbor Freight one. And the only thing I did,
Yeah, we all got one of those.
but I did the modification that you can find on YouTube. You put
DC
the large,
electrode negative.
exactly.
Yeah.
You put the large bridge, the 100 amp bridge rectifier, and
Yep,
this
and the
massive
capacitor.
capacitor,
Yep.
and it works a hell of a lot better. And for the small stuff that I need to do,
Yeah, a lot less
that's
slag.
perfect.
Yeah.
A lot less slag, and it's a lot cleaner. And one of those rear hangers of a mowing deck, I welded it back on. I mean, it was dirty as all hell, but I mean, I cleaned up the slag, of course, but it's nothing that I would pay $30 an hour to do.
Well, now they come DC electro negative.
They do, because they learned from their mistake. Because before it was just a transformer in a box, but
Right.
I mean, it's good to know basic stuff like that, because in the small engine world, you gotta.
Well, I've had this discussion with a few guys, not you guys, but in the telephone business, your hot lead is like the old British Leyland cars. It's negative.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you've got a 5,000 amp feed that's negative 50 volts.
Yep.
And then your ground is the positive.
Ah.
And in that whole design, and it was been like that since 1905 when they started doing switching equipment, you never get corrosion on your power leads because your ground is the positive, and that's where the corrosion is.
Yep.
And then your hot lead runs clean, and you get also less noise in your system because every hot lead doesn't have corrosion on it.
Corrosion on
You think that's why they did that years ago in the cars, Bruce, when they had negative positive?
I think it was an old telephone thing that they started doing with the cars, and actually it made more sense to do it that way than the way they do it now.
Yeah, it's the negative chassis ground now.
But the lousy system won, right?
Yeah. Well, because
Yeah.
what is it? Current flows positive to negative, but the electrons flow negative.
Conventional versus something current flow.
Right.
It's been a long time, man.
Well, it's 'cause they didn't understand what they were doing, but you're right. It would seem like the neutral, the negative, should be the one with the wires actually going to right where you need it,
Right.
instead of the positive.
Yeah.
A little back.
So
the more
and
you
then
know.
and then in about the mid 70s we went to a third ground. And you know how the old cars and the old trucks used the frame to turn on the return to the light?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that's just a safety ground.
Yep.
And there's a third wire from the equipment back to the bus bar for grounding.
Yep.
Just like you're having the ground and your neutral in the house. Same
Exactly.
idea.
Because the ground only carries current during a fault.
Right.
It's not a current.
And in an electrical storm, that's what happens is the ground around your house actually changes polarity.
It does.
Yeah, that's what happens in a lightning storm. That's
Yep.
where everything goes off.
I have a burn mark on my wall next to my outlet in my garage from a lightning strike.
The
Oh,
Rangers,
man.
the Rangers won
No
again.
joke. I mean,
It's not the spoilers playing tonight though. Who is it?
The Rangers won again.
Oh, they did. Eh?
yeah.
I'm from Calgary, right? So it's Edmonton, Calgary. They're 4 hours apart. I live in Red Deer. It's exactly
Red
halfway
Deer.
between.
I know where you are now.
Well,
Right?
the
Yeah.
GM,
And-
the
and,
GM of the Rangers is
So I
from
call
somewhere.
nowhere.
I'm not a hockey fan. I used to be, but I call the Edmonton Oilers. I call them the Edmonton Spoilers.
Mhm.
much disgust of many of my friends.
Do you feel like Toronto people are not hockey fans? They're just fans.
No, it's a different world.
It's a different world.
There's Canada and then there's Toronto.
Yeah. I've heard. The reason I asked because I've heard that. I just didn't know what the validity of how valid it really was.
It's such a high density area, like
It is the GTA.
compared to where I live, right? I mean,
Yeah. Oh man.
yeah, nothing against my Toronto friends. I mean, we're all part of Canada, right?
Yeah.
You know,
No, it's
we love to hate each other.
the time I spent up there was so much fun. I mean, you can hear a pin drop. It was a game between the Edmonton Oilers and the Leafs, and
The Leafs, yeah.
and they just opened up this new stadium, and I got there. But like second tier bowl was like 235 Canadian to get up there. I mean, that was and you were pretty close to the ice. But what's incredible, and this is what the part I love about hockey up in Canada is that you can go up there, they're watching it so intent as the puck is going back and forth, but no one's talking. There's no.
Well, no, the fans are watching the game.
Fans are watching the game. They are extremely engaged.
It's a fast game.
Right. It's a very fast game. But when when that horn goes off, man, the place erupts like it.
Just crazy.
It's what a blast. I had such a great time up there. Yeah.
Yeah, I've
That's my
dropped
favorite
hockey.
place.
I'm not sure why. I do watch the last. Well, for us, it was the Battle of Alberta, Edmonton and Calgary last week.
Calgary, yeah.
It was the big game, eh? Like I can't believe Edmonton won because Calgary was the favorite through the whole thing, and they only got one game out of 5. Or yeah,
What kills me this year is the past 2 years, the champion team is from Florida.
Yep.
It's like usually you don't associate.
well,
hockey.
that's where the money is.
Yeah.
That's why I've stopped watching it. Why would a poor man like me go spend $500 to
I
watch
know
a
you're
rich
watching
man
hockey.
play a game?
What's the team from? Dallas, Vegas, Tampa. I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah, Vegas. You can't. How do
I
they make
know.
ice in Vegas?
oh,
Oh, they can. The ice is not that. It's not that thick.
Anyway, I gotta go, guys.
Yeah, guys, it's coming up on 2 hours. I think we
That
got.
was fun.
It was a lot of fun.
I actually wish I knew more about generators than I do,
No, it's all good. I mean,
but I have a great electrical knowledge in my
and
my
they're
head.
all related. They really are. I mean, when I'm
Yeah.
repairing the boards, I mean, the having that background in the electronics and understanding the components and what they do is a very helpful thing. I'm just surprised. I think once some of the storms up here in the Northeast start to, come up, I think that we'll probably do another live here. We can help out with anyone that's curious about generators, because that's
you were talking about hurricane season, right? Weren't you? I saw you in your
hurricane. Yeah, well, so they just, and again, they predicted this last year, and I guess this will be the last topic here. NOAA predicted that it's going to be an above average
Big year. Yes, I
It's
saw
going to
that.
be a big year for the Atlantic Basin, and we already got one. It's already hitting Florida
Hit
now.
Puerto Vallarta,
Yep,
or
hitting
south of
Florida.
Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah, and just a lot of rain, right? Not really a lot of wind. It's just a lot of rain. But it's very early on in the season. It's only the beginning of June. Usually it's around June. I think it's June 30th is when the official season opens, and then it goes till November 30th. But it's the peak season is sometime in end of July in the beginning of August. Usually you get that bell curve where most of them happen because
September,
of
I think.
But they're calling for a La Nina, which means that you're going to have more storms in the Atlantic Basin. So people on the East Coast they're gonna have to be prepared. I'm sure.
You know what though? It's because of you two guys that I'm not afraid to take the back off the stators and stuff and have a look now. Because 90% of my problems with generators are the fact that they sit around and they don't get used, and you clean the carburetor, you tune them up, and you run them, and you can turn on a heater at 3,000 watts, and away it goes, and you send it down the road and charge the guy $80, and you're done.
Exactly.
And now I'm actually on my own stuff. I'm taking the back off just to see what I've got. So
when I first started doing this, I only would buy generators that had carb issues, which is like 80% of them out there. But then I'm so cheap. I'm like, well, there's one here for $70. Why don't I try that one? See if I can fix it.
Yeah.
But I've got so much going on with my small engine stuff that I've been doing for 10 years or more online and YouTube for 10 years.
Yeah.
That I just don't have the time, man. And we go to Mexico for 3 months a year too. So I've only got a 9-month window to fit, and I have a video twice a week for the whole year. So I got to do
I do
a lot of scheduling.
Banked up.
Ken knows how busy I am in November and December, pumping out 4 videos a week, not 2, to fill in my year. It's tough.
It's tough.
I'm busy.
It's tough to get to fill in the content. It's tough to fill up a minute, especially if it's meaningful content.
Yeah.
But
you got to keep yourself from cheating too, eh?
Exactly. Generators in general. I mean, it mates the two of my favorite hobbies: electricity and small engine, right? But and I look at them as hobbies. I mean, I do it as a business, but in magnets too. I enjoy it as a hobby. I don't enjoy it as a business. I don't. It's because it's time consuming, But the interesting is, talking about it and figuring out what's wrong with it, because I, want to be able to figure it out on my own. And, I when I first knew about you, James, I was on your channel for quite a few hours. I'm like, oh, you ran into that. Oh, I ran into that. Oh, I didn't. I better save that for later.
Didn't you guys know each other from Smokestack or something?
He found me.
I knew of Gary from Smokestack. He didn't know of me.
No.
I actually joined Smokestack, and I think I posted something once, and I was hoping that Bass Guitarist 1985 would respond, and he never did. Someone else responded pretty much telling me to go somewhere else. They didn't give me the answer I was looking for. I'm like,
Yeah.
Well,
No.
I got on to James through Ken.
Yeah, and then I met Ken. I met you through James, I think, right?
Mm.
So it's that
Yeah.
comes full circle. I mean,
Yeah.
I joined Smokestack back in 2011.
And this is how much
Same
is out
thing.
there, guys. Like I got on to Tin Man because of Ken,
Yep.
and he's in Winnipeg, which is close to us. He's only 1,100 miles away,
oh, that's it.
but and he's a hell of a tech.
Oh,
You know, and look at all these things we're trying to learn all at the same time. I mean, there's everything from chainsaws to generators, and from thermostats that you have in your own house, right down to the heater in your car. I mean, we're all the same guys. We're out there. We're not paying somebody to do that. And
Yeah,
we're all in this mess together, right? I think it's really cool.
And as long as
YouTube's changed my life.
It has. I mean, I love the platform. I mean, I've learned so much on the platform. You know, you try to, for as much as you absorb, you try to give back, what you've learned too.
Pay it forward.
Try to pay it forward. Exactly. I mean, I started on Smokestack back in 2011 to fix my two generators that I had, and I didn't know squat about that. I mean, I had a general interest, but that's where it starts. If you have a general interest and you want to learn how to do the repair work, then you're going to be you're far along than most people out there these days.
We would get apprentices at work, and you could tell that if they were going to make it or not just from their general curiosity.
Yes.
Yep.
If they had a curiosity, this guy's.
And to me, the younger generation doesn't have that. Very
You're
few.
starting to sound like me.
Well, yes.
No, I think they
all
do.
They do, but
it varies.
It varies, but like
their attention span's about that big, though.
Well, that's it, and a lot of them have, if they have a disability or a learning disability and they need special training.
Oh, hey, it's in to be dyslexic now.
Right,
back when I was a kid, they just whacked you on the side of the head and told you to smarten up.
Yeah, but you can't do that today. I mean, I have an autistic nephew, so he needs the special tutelage and everything. But if they have that drive and desire to learn how to work on these things, that's what I'm not finding. They just the lack of attention is not really the issue. It's more
maybe we were a small number of the maybe we're a small number of the population.
Maybe we are.
The time too. It's only so much time, but I mean, 6 years ago, it's the same thing. I knew nothing about generators.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Very little about small engines. But if you're good at solving problems, you figure it out.
Right.
ABC.
Figure it out. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right,
I learned my trade in front of all my subs. When I found something, it would be like, "Isn't this cool? Look at that!"
Yeah, exactly. Watch my earlier videos.
I couldn't get
everything was so cool.
and the ring popped off. The seat popped off the block, and now I didn't have compression. Isn't that cool?
Oh boy,
that's why I learned it. That's how I learned it.
That's
right in front of the camera.
Right, and you learn as you go.
Exactly. Anyway, I better go. I hate to be a bummer on this one, but thanks, John, if you're watching, for bringing us up.
No worries. Hey guys, thank you so much.
John Clem gave me.
John Clem, yes,
told me to come up.
We'll look to do another one maybe next month. Next month is going to be crazy with the family visiting, but we'll stay.
Yes.
And if we have if there's a storm coming up and it's going to be in my area or at least in the Northeast here, maybe we can join up another panel here if there's any questions. I'd really like to get more people to ask the questions.
But I think you got to go earlier in the day, though.
Early in the day, yeah. I mean, I know it's
the whole
a lot of people. I didn't get a lot of people on that 5 o'clock. I didn't get. There wasn't. I mean, it was great to hang out and chat, but I didn't see a lot of people in the chat.
But too, we do have to advertise a little better.
Yeah.
Like for example, I threw it on mine, but it's like you have to throw it on 2-3 days in advance. People that look at your community pages, and then you'll get people into it. Because the couple of times you and I did it with the.
A couple hundred people.
Yeah, we had 200 people. I mean, it was crazy.
It was crazy.
But we hyped it up. We did on Mix. We announced it. This and that. So it. Yeah. If you announce it and a lot of people know about it, boom. Because all your subscribers, Jim, with you, I mean, you'll have 200-300 people, a no-brainer.
Well, I don't know though. The community postings seem to be largely going unnoticed. I'll post something and I'll check back on it 4 hours later, and there'll be like 3 thumbs up, and I'm like, Yeah, YouTube's changed something. Like the community posts.
No,
just
the
aren't
community
really
posts
getting-
are not, because like when you go onto the YouTube app, you don't see the community postings necessarily. I mean,
No.
they should be in your newsfeed, but it's
Well, I'll
more-
actually, and they don't see any information. Like somebody will make a comment on an 8-year-old video,
Mhm.
you know, and I'll go, "Do you realize this video is 8 years old?" And they don't even comment back because they didn't see any of it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they'll ask you, "Hey, how'd that work out?" And you're like, "I don't know. The guy died, or the machine's gone."
Yeah.
Well, that's what, and
Yeah.
that's happened. You know, you comment on a video from that long ago.
Oh, people ask me, "Hey, can you look at this?" I'm like, "That machine's been gone for 5 years." Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Guys, again, thank you
All
so
right.
much. Really appreciate.
Yeah, how fun
the
is this, eh?
conversation.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
and we all learn by sharing.
That's right.
Doesn't that sound? That sounds kind of cliche, though, doesn't it? Yeah.
A little
Sharing.
As long as we're getting paid on the side to do it.
You got Melbourne, Australia watching you.
Yeah,
I saw
that's
that.
awesome, guys.
We need to get a guy on the weekend streams down from down there, eh?
Well, I got the new guy. What's his name? Tom Vintage Engine Repair, or whatever. He
Okay.
was on my stream last week. He said to me, he goes, he texted me, or he messaged me this morning. He goes, "Ken, where were you this morning?" And then he goes, "Oh shit, it's Friday." He thought it was Saturday. He thought I'd be at Duchess at
Both
6
my wife and I
a.m.
are retired
Oh.
and all.
6 p.m. for him. So he chimed in. He goes, "Where's Ken?" It's Friday.
Both my wife and I. Well, I got to add this in. Both my wife and I are retired, right? And I've been retired for a long time. So I'll say to her, "It feels like Wednesday," you know, because we don't even know what day it is, except
Well,
I got.
what's Conquer say? Every day's Saturday, right? Is that what he
Well,
said?
not really. I don't even know. But some days feel like a Monday. Some days feel like a Saturday. Except Saturdays are the live stream. I usually
Oh, yeah.
reserve that.
There you go. Well,
I'll be
Thanks,
there
guys. It
tomorrow.
was fun.
Darren, thanks so
Gotta go.
much. Appreciate it. You know, it
Thank
doesn't.
you.
Yeah, I'll be at Duchess tomorrow morning, my 6 a.m. probably.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I probably won't be up that early, but a little bit later.
I'll be
But,
sleeping.
Everyone, hang tight.
we'll try that GP 5500. We'll see if we come up with it.
Yeah, hang tight on here after the live broadcast. Hey guys,
Yeah.
thanks so much again. We're signing off here.